Chapter 1304. Looking at the two people who had been crossed off the list, Shishan Giant Ox wanted to cry but had no tears. He didn't dare to talk back to Xiao Qin. It was too late to regret now. Lysianer? Why is she here too? After looking at the list of the immortal cultivation sects, Xiao Qin muttered in confusion. Why does it seem that almost all the people I know have gathered together? Could it be that the immortal cultivation world is the base camp of my family? Although he felt strange, Xiao Qin didn't raise any objections. Since she wanted to go, then let her go. In any case, as a member of the immortal cultivation sect, Song Weizong and the others would definitely arrange for someone to take care of her. Hearing Xiao Qin's muttering, Song Weizong's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. With the example of Shishan Giant Ox, he certainly didn't dare to be negligent. He approached and asked cautiously, "Little friend Xiao Qin, is there a problem with this Lysianer? If you think she can't go, then tell me. I can let another disciple replace her." "Oh, it's not a big problem. She happens to be my younger sister's classmate, so when I saw this name I was just a little surprised." Xiao Qin shrugged and explained simply. He had only met Lysianer a few times, and his impression of her was a little vague. He didn't have a good impression of her, but he didn't have any malicious intentions either. He was just purely curious. So that's how it is. Lysianer can be the classmate of little friend Xiao Qin's younger sister. It's her good fortune. Song Weizong heaved a sigh of relief and sighed sincerely. After looking at everyone's list, Xiao Qin silently calculated in his heart. He found that apart from the Ghost Cultivation Sect and the Immortal Cultivation Sect, there were only a total of 6 people from the Awakening Sect and the 3 major families. There were still 4 extra places. Xiao Qin pondered for a while and decided to give the 4 spots to the Ghost Cultivation Sect and the Immortal Cultivation Sect. After all, the 2 sects had contributed to the process of the sacrificial ceremony and the search for the women with spiritual qi, so it was not too much to give them 2 more spots. He inadvertently turned his head to look and found that Shishan Giant Bull was standing at the side gloomily, staring at the name list in his hand with a dejected look. It was obvious that he was depressed for rashly agreeing to Xiao Qin's exchange just now. All right. Who are you trying to show your stinky face to? If I didn't know better, I would have thought that I was bullying you." Xiao Qin scolded angrily. "Isn't it just the 2 of you? I'll add 2 more slots for you. You can add those 2 people in." "Immortal Xiao, I didn't." Shishan Giant Bull was about to explain when it suddenly heard the second half of Xiao Qin's sentence. Its face suddenly lit up and it asked, "Is what you said true? Can I really add these 2 to the team? Do you think I'm joking with you? If you don't want them, I'll take them back." Xiao Qin rolled his eyes and said indifferently, Yes. How could I not want them? Thank you, Immortal Xiao, for being so magnanimous, wise and considerate. Most importantly, you are really good to me." Shishan Giant Bull's face almost turned into a chrysanthemum flower. It couldn't wait to use all the words of praise on Xiao Qin. "So, Xiao Qin, my little friend, look." Song Weizong was dumbfounded. Why did he only give 2 spots to the Ghost Cultivation Sect? Didn't he say that it would be evenly distributed? Why was there favoritism? If the Ghost Cultivation Sect only had 2 more people in the Immortal Cultivation world, how could the Immortal Cultivation Sect survive there? As he was thinking about how to express his dissatisfaction, Xiao Qin waved his hand and said indifferently, "Don't think too much. Of course, I won't only give them 1. Your Immortal Cultivation Sect will also have 2 more spots. You can choose the candidates yourself. What do you think? Is that enough?" "Enough. Okay, thank you, my little friend Xiao Qin. You are too polite." Song Weizong was so excited that he couldn't speak coherently. He didn't know what he wanted to express. "Humph, old Ghost Song, you have to thank our Ghost Cultivation Sect. If it wasn't for the fact that Immortal Xiao gave us 2 places and felt sorry for you, you wouldn't have been able to get these places." The giant ox of the Western Mountain curled its lips and mocked in a strange tone. "Nonsense. I don't want to talk to you." Song Weizong was still immersed in the joy of having 2 more spots. He looked at the list and thought about who to add. He didn't have time to bicker with Shishan Giant Bull. Shishan Giant Bull didn't get a response, so he snorted in boredom. He looked up and saw that the sky outside the window was completely dark. He smiled and suggested to Xiao Qin, "Immortal Xiao, it's getting late. I think the preparation for opening the portal is about to be finished. Why don't we go and have a meeting for everyone first? What do you think?" "No." Xiao Qin was stunned. He looked out of the window in surprise and asked doubtfully, "I remember that we should be arranged to enter the Immortal Cultivation world during the day, right? It's so inconvenient to be in the middle of the night." Xiao Qin was a little confused. What were these two old guys thinking? Didn't most people sleep at night? Could it be that after entering the immortal cultivation world from the internal martial arts world, they still had to suffer from jet lag? That was too much of a fraud. Shishan Giant Bull explained with a bitter face. Immortal Shao, it's like this. Because our ghost cultivation sect has selected a few Yin cultivators to enter the immortal cultivation world this time, I don't know if you know their attributes. It's not convenient for them to appear during the day, so they can only appear at night. Humph, treacherous villains, a group of guys who can't see the light. Song Weizong snorted coldly. Obviously, he despised the ghost cultivation sect's habit of only appearing at night. His face even showed a look of disgust and disdain. Shishan Giant Bull glared at him and didn't refute. After all, Song Weizong was right. Not only did Yin cultivators dislike daytime, but even the evil cultivators were not willing to act wantonly in broad daylight. The sun shone in all directions and was extremely hot. The sunlight was even more righteous, which had a great impact on the mental cultivation methods of the ghost cultivation sect. Therefore, these cultivators usually did not want to see the light. Otherwise, their combat power would be greatly reduced. Oh, I see. Okay, then let's go now. After listening to the explanation of Shishan Giant Bull, Xiao Qin suddenly realized. He remembered that Nye Xiaoyu and Shishan Old Ghost were really like this. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they basically did not go out during the day and hid in the coolest place. Xiao Qin remembered that Nye Xiaoyu once told him that if the Yin Qi in his body came into contact with sunlight, it would be easily eroded, and his cultivation would also decline or even be seriously injured. Standing up, Xiao Qin was about to leave the room with Shishan Giant Bull and Song Weizong when he suddenly remembered something. He turned his head and smiled at Xing Girl next to him. By the way, you will be the representative of Qi Tian sect in the mobilization meeting later. You will go to the speech part and I will just watch from the side. Chapter 1305. You want me to give a speech? But I don't know how to do that. Hearing Xiao Qin say this, Xing Niu panicked and didn't know what to do. Growing up in Awakening Heaven sect, Xing Niu had always been used to doing things according to orders. In the past, whenever there was a big occasion in Awakening Heaven sect, it was always Sidu Qitian or Elder Son who went on stage to give a speech. She had nothing to do at all. Now that she suddenly had to give a speech in front of so many Awakening Heaven sect disciples, and there were many people from other sects watching, Xing Niu felt her mind go blank and subconsciously wanted to refuse. Why wouldn't I know how to? Can't I just go up and say a few words? Without waiting for Xing Niu to organize a reason to refuse, Xiao Qin said matter-of-factly, "What's more, you're the grand sect leader of Awakening Heaven sect. As the person in charge, I'm just a part-time errand boy. How can I steal your limelight at such a crucial time?" "Tsk, you sure make it sound nice." Hearing Xiao Qin say this, Xing Niu pouted and immediately retorted, "Why is it that ever since you came to Awakening Heaven sect, it seems like you're the one in charge of everything? It doesn't have anything to do with me at all. Now you remember me, the sect leader?" Although she said this, Xing Niu also knew that what Xiao Qin said was the truth. As the sect leader of Awakening Heaven sect, if she still let Xiao Qin go on stage in this kind of big occasion, it would seem too lacking in prestige. Not to mention the Awakening Heaven sect disciples, even the spectators would think that she was just a puppet. Although she was still a little unwilling, Xing Niu threw the thought of refusing to the back of her mind. She tried hard to recall what Sidu Qitian and Elder Son had said in the past and frowned as she organized her words. "I just want you to get used to it first." Xiao Qin didn't feel embarrassed at all. Instead, he boasted shamelessly, "Since we're already so familiar with each other, what difference does it make?" "What do you mean by outside inside? Do you think a married couple lives?" Nonsense. This Xiao Qin was too shameless. The Shishan Giant Bull and Song Weizong were still outside. They dared to say anything. Don't worry, just boldly go on stage and spout nonsense. Anyway, no matter what you say, no one will dare to raise any objections." Xiao Qin waved his hand carelessly and hummed a little tune, "Little sister, walk boldly forward." He pulled Xing Lass's hand and left the room, walking towards the plaza near the main entrance of Qitian Gate. Feeling the warmth from Xiao Qin's hand, Miss Xing's heart was filled with happiness that she had never experienced before. However, her mouth refused to admit defeat. She pouted and said, "Since no one dares to object, you might as well go and give a speech. I'm not good at this." Cough, cough, cough. "Oh, my throat suddenly feels uncomfortable. I can't speak." Xiao Qin suddenly violently coughed a few times and pretended to be in pain. With one hand he grabbed Xing Lass and refused to let go. With the other hand he made yes sounds in sign language. Little Miss Xing was already speechless at Xiao Chen's feigning ignorance. She couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. Looking at his comical feigning ignorance, she found it both funny and infuriating. She couldn't be bothered to expose him anymore. Besides, Xiao Chen was usually weird. After interacting with him for a long time, little Chick Xing became familiar with his unconventional way of doing things. She was influenced by him and smiled a lot more than before. After this period of close contact, Xing Lass's impression of Xiao Chen had gradually changed. She could also feel his care and concern for her. The favorable impression between the two had greatly increased. Although the paper window between them had not been pierced, it was already so thin that it was almost invisible. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that although the two had not reached the stage of marriage, they had already accepted each other in their hearts. After calling out to the group of girls next door, Xiao Chen brought the female army to the plaza near the open heaven gate. Looking at the dense crowd of cultivators in the plaza, all of them had looks of admiration on their faces. Their eyes were shining as they watched him and the others walk over in a line. Then he turned back to look at Qing Menjing and the other girls behind him. Xiao Chen couldn't help but feel very emotional. When he had first entered the inner martial world, and even when he had just entered the venerable realm, he was just an insignificant cultivator among the many cultivators. Now he had become the manipulator behind the scenes of the Open Heaven Gate, the three great clans, and even the Immortal Cultivation Sect and the Ghost Cultivation Sect. Xiao Chen suddenly felt that all the mountains were small. However, Xiao Chen did not become arrogant because of this. He was very clear about the following situation. As long as he entered the Immortal Cultivation world, the days of having clouds and rain turned over with one turn of the hand would be gone forever. He would have to start from zero again. After all, the Immortal Cultivation world was full of cultivators. As a fellow cultivator, he had personally experienced the strength of cultivators. Moreover, the omnipotent Elder Heaven Ancestor had fallen from there. Therefore, Xiao Chen firmly remembered that after entering the Immortal Cultivation world, he absolutely could not be careless. Otherwise, it was very likely that a single mistake would lead to the destruction of the entire team. Although it was called a mobilization meeting, there was actually nothing to mobilize. Everyone had already received the news. Right now they were just going through the motions. At the beginning, Xishan Giant Ox and Song Weizong announced the list of people who were qualified to enter the Immortal Cultivation world. After all the cultivators had been announced, the rest of the cultivators were naturally taken away by the disciples of Awakening Heaven sect. They returned to their sect residences to rest and waited for the next day to pack their luggage and return home. The candidates of the Immortal Cultivation sect were Hong Zhu, Li Xiener and her master, the head of the Hong family Hong Dingwei, the head of the Song family Song Weizong, Song Qingshu, third young master Hong, and a few unknown disciples. Originally, Hong Dingwei had asked Hong Yan if she would like to experience the Immortal Cultivation world with Hong Zhu. Unfortunately, Hong Yan hesitated for a long time and finally chose to refuse. After all, when the time came, Xiao Chen would also enter. The relationship between the two had not broken the ice yet. If he entered the Immortal Cultivation world, it would definitely be affected. Hong Yan did not want to cause trouble for others because of her, so she simply did not enter. On the other side, the people of the Ghost Cultivation sect were Xishan Giant Ox, Elder Xishan Mad Devil, Nie Xiaoyu and Old Demon of Xishan, who were personally selected by Xiao Chen. As for the rest of the strange-looking guys, Xiao Chen did not know them. As for the people of Awakening Heaven sect, in addition to Xiao Chen, Qing Menjing and Tang Tang, the rest were Gong Sun Yin, Yu Xiaochuan and Jia Tuyao. There were 6 of them in total. Together with the 24 people from the other 2 sects, they just reached the upper limit of the number of people to enter the Immortal Cultivation world. Chapter 1306. When there were only those who wanted to enter the Immortal Cultivation world left on the square, Xishan Giant Cow and Song Weizong stood in front of the stage respectively and said some encouraging words to the disciples of their respective sections. They were rather restrained and only set their goals on their own cultivation and breakthrough. They did not directly go against the other sections. Otherwise, it was very likely that the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect would have already fought each other before entering the Immortal Cultivation world. When Xishan Giant Cow and Song Weizong had finished speaking, Miss Xing turned around and looked at Xiao Chen for guidance. Xiao Chen nodded at her and smiled encouragingly. Little Chick Xing took a deep breath, turned around and walked up to the stage. She also gave an impassioned and generous speech. She looked pretty decent. Although the atmosphere was stirred up by Miss Xing, her motivational speech was actually nothing special. It was nothing more than a reminder to everyone that after entering the immortal cultivation world, everything had to be based on Xiao Qin as the leader. They had to be cautious and not mess around, lest they offend some forces that they could not afford to offend. The simple mobilization meeting came to an end, and the people below the stage gradually dispersed. Xiao Qin thought for a while, and it seemed like he didn't have anywhere else to go, so he stayed behind with Miss Xing, planning to supervise the construction of the altar's formation. This altar's array was what the group of spiritual chi female priests would be using when the time came. Xiao Qin thought that he could take the opportunity to learn more about it. After all, he did not fully understand the domain of spiritual chi female priests. Brother Xiao. Brother Xiao. Just as Xiao Qin turned around and prepared to walk towards the altar's array, a neutral voice suddenly rang out. Then he saw a pink-purple figure split the crowd and rush towards him impatiently. Hearing this familiar name, Xiao Qin did not need to turn around to know who it was. Brother Xiao, why are you at Qi Tianmen? This is simply unbelievable. That figure rushed to Xiao Qin's back and pouted coquettishly. Xiao Qin laughed helplessly and turned around to greet, "Young Master Kun, long time no see. How have you been recently? Your Yu clan should have a lot of influence in Songning City now, right?" The person who came was Yu Xiaochuan, who had not been seen for a long time. He was wearing a pink and purple sportswear, and his elegant long hair was permed into big waves. He looked very feminine. Seeing Xiao Qin, whom he had been thinking about day and night, appear before him, Yu Xiaochuan was extremely excited. He grabbed Xiao Qin's hand and said, "Oh, brother Xiao, where have you been recently? I miss you so much." "Ugh, I've been." Hearing Yu Xiaochuan's self-title, Xiao Qin couldn't help but shiver. He was about to answer his question when he was suddenly interrupted by Yu Xiaochuan. "By the way, what nonsense were you talking about?" Yu Xiaochuan suddenly blushed and stamped his feet. He pouted and said, "Since the decline of the Qing family, the most powerful family in Songning City is your Xiao family. Our Yu clan is just a helper for the Xiao family, just like how we've been helping you." Looking at Yu Xiaochuan's beautiful outfit, coupled with his blushing and coquettish manner, Xiao Qin only felt his hair stand on end. He really couldn't accept it. Just as he was thinking about how to answer this topic, Qing Minjing, who was behind him, became unhappy. "Yu Xiaochuan, you really can't say anything decent. What nonsense are you saying in front of me?" Qing Minjing stood out from behind Xiao Qin. She put her hands on her hips and scolded with her eyes wide open. "Although our Qing family suffered a little setback a while ago, we've overcome it now. We're still developing vigorously in Songning City. How could we decline? Don't talk nonsense over there." "That's right. If you ask Beibei, the Xiao family, the Qing family, and the Jin family are the top 3 families in Songning City. What the hell is the Yu clan? What's so great about it?" Jin Beibei also came close at this moment, not convinced at all. "You're right. The Yu clan is only a small fry at best. They're nothing in front of me." Qing Minjing nodded in high spirits. For the first time, she felt that Jin Beibei's words were quite pleasing to her ears. Jin Beibei walked around Yu Xiaochuan and observed him for a while. Suddenly she asked Xiao Qin in confusion, "Cousin-in-law, is this person a man or a woman? Why does he look like a transvestite?" In fact, Jin Beibei knew Yu Xiaochuan. However, he looked completely different from the one Jin Beibei had seen at that time. It was normal for Jin Beibei to be a little puzzled. "Well, actually he's fine." Xiao Qin was slightly stunned. He also glanced at Yu Xiaochuan and didn't know what to say when he saw Yu Xiaochuan's feminine look. Looking at Yu Xiaochuan's current look, Xiao Qin really couldn't figure out what was going on with him. In his impression, Xiao Qin only knew that this guy had become a bit androgynous after practicing the Chrysanthemum treasure book. However, it didn't seem to be as exaggerated as it was now. Although Xiao Qin couldn't get used to Yu Xiaochuan's change, Yu Xiaochuan was really good to him. Previously, he risked his life to block the attack for Xiao Qin and took care of Tang Tang for a while. By the way, Yu Xiaochuan hadn't seen Tang Tang yet. "Tang Tang, come here and see who's here." Xiao Qin hurriedly turned his head and shouted at Tang Tang, who was farther away. Hearing Xiao Qin's shout, Tang Tang walked over from a distance. Seeing that it was Yu Xiaochuan, she was a little surprised. However, when she saw Qing Minjing's angry face and Jin Beibei's cunning eyes, she could roughly guess what had happened. "Yu Xiaochuan, long time no see. Why are you arguing with Miss Qing as soon as you come?" Tang Tang walked forward and greeted Yu Xiaochuan. Then she turned around and said to Qing Minjing and Jin Beibei, "Please don't mind him. This guy is a bit weird and he doesn't mince his words. Please don't take it to heart." Although she was not very friendly to Yu Xiaochuan, Tang Tang's main purpose was to help him out of trouble. After all, this guy was her sister. She knew exactly why he became like this. Cheng Menjing was not an unreasonable person in the first place. Hearing what Tang Tang said, her face was much more relaxed. She sniffed and said, "Since you are defending him, I'll let it go this time. Remember, the Cheng family will never decline." Jean Bebe echoed, "Cousin, you're right. You Xiaochuan, not that I want to criticize you, but you really live up to the saying long hair but short eyes." Miss Cheng, Jean Bebe, Sister Tang Tang. Seeing that Cheng Minjing and the other women were also present, Yu Xiaochuan did not feel angry because of their sarcasm. Instead, he was happy as if he had seen his family. He was excited and his eyes sparkled. He asked very enthusiastically, "Why are you guys here? What a coincidence. We are so fated." Chapter 1307. It's a long story. Miss and the others. Xiaochen was also helpless towards Yu Xiaochuan. Seeing that the other women had no intention of answering him, he had to briefly describe his and Cheng Menjing's experiences. He also deliberately concealed some of the more legendary content, so as not to arouse Yu Xiaochuan's curiosity and incessant questions. Although Xiaochen was still not used to Yu Xiaochuan's situation, Yu Xiaochuan was still a person who saved his life. In the future, everyone would be wandering in the cultivation world. He couldn't ignore him. There were still some situations that he had to let Yu Xiaochuan know in advance. "Wow. Brother Xiao, I didn't expect you and Miss Cheng's experience to be so rough. You guys are really lucky." Yu Xiaochuan cupped his hands in his chest and said with a tearful look, "I feel terrible just by listening to it. I didn't expect you to have such courage to face it. I admire you so much." "Actually, it's not that bad." Xiaochen trembled unconsciously and replied with difficulty. Yu Xiaochuan's face became serious. He suddenly turned to blame, "Brother Xiao, I'm not trying to criticize you. Since you were in trouble in Songning City, why didn't you call me? Did you think that I couldn't beat that centipede?" In fact, Yu Xiaochuan felt a little jealous after listening to the experience of Xiao Chen and Cheng Menjing. If the person who went through the difficulties with Xiao Chen was him, he would definitely not let him suffer so much. Ugh. Xiao Chen was really speechless this time. The sweat on his head was almost coming down. He had never thought of asking Yu Xiaochuan to help him before. After all, this was a matter between him and Cheng Menjing. In the situation at that time, there was no need to involve Yu Xiaochuan. Besides, Cheng Menjing and I are engaged. It's natural for us to overcome difficulties together. Although Yu Xiaochuan has a good relationship with me, it's not that good. Why should I think of you? However, these words could not be said directly to Yu Xiaochuan. Otherwise, with Yu Xiaochuan's temper, it was possible that he would cry. Xiaochen was at a loss of what to do and did not know how to deal with it. Suddenly, whispers came from not far away. Hey, do you think that androgynous transvestite is having an affair with the gigolo on the stage? Tisk tsk, there must be a problem. I heard that the pretty boy is called Xiao Qin, and he is also the leader of this trip to the cultivation world." No way, what was Junyo thinking? To actually let this Lord Longyang lead the team, wouldn't they be done for? It looks like we're in grave danger this time. Holy shit. Can you guys keep your voices down? Although that person has a penchant for men, it is said that he is an extremely powerful expert. Be careful not to let him hear it. So what if he hears it? Anyway, when we enter the cultivation world, we will all go our separate ways. I don't want to be commanded by this kind of monster. Not far away, a group of evil cultivators from the ghost cultivation sect gathered together and whispered to each other. Some of them even pointed at Xiao Chen and Yu Xiaochuan and laughed wretchedly from time to time. Although the evil cultivators' voices were very low, they were still heard by Xiao Chen, who had a sensitive divine sense. However, he did not care too much. With his current cultivation, it was easy for him to kill those evil cultivators. He just felt that there was no need to make a big deal out of it. After all, with Xiao Chen's current cultivation, there was already a world of difference between him and these evil cultivators who were hiding in the dark. If he really fought with them, it would be degrading his own status. You bastards, what are you hiding there and talking about? Xiao Chen did not plan to make a move, but Yu Xiaochuan did not want to pretend that he did not hear it. He immediately turned around and stared at the evil cultivators and said sinisterly, "Mother***, so what if I am talking about you?" The evil cultivators were not afraid of trouble. They looked at each other and one of them, who was burly, stood out first. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and stared at Yu Xiaochuan with a sullen face. Yu Xiaochuan was not frightened by the evil cultivator's imposing manner. Instead, he stared at the evil cultivator and said coldly, It's fine if you are talking about me, but why do you have to drag Brother Xiao into this? He is so handsome from head to toe. How does he look like a monster? Hurry up and come over here and apologize to our brother Xiao. Apologize? The burly evil cultivator did not take Yu Xiaochuan's threat seriously at all. Instead, he spat and said sarcastically, "Looking at your clothes, I can tell that you are not a good person. Moreover, you are flirting with that toy boy. I guess you must have had a lot of fun in the room last night, right?" Ah. The other evil cultivators seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. They immediately convulsed with laughter and could not close their mouths. In their opinion, Yu Xiaochuan was just a wax spear with a silver appearance. He was not a threat at all. You are courting death. The corner of Yu Xiaochuan's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He moved slightly a few steps and then he did not move again. Suddenly a cold wind blew around them. Yu Xiaochuan stood there, staring coldly at the leading evil cultivator. His eyes were emotionless as if he was looking at a dead man. Xiao Qin, who was standing behind him, suddenly raised his eyebrows, and his expression changed when he looked at Yu Xiaochuan. In the eyes of others, Yu Xiaochuan was confronting the evil cultivator, but Xiao Qin was very clear that the evil cultivator was already dead. This was also something that secretly surprised Xiao Qin. When did Yu Xiaochuan become so powerful? Was it because of the chrysanthemum treasure book? The evil cultivators behind the burly evil cultivator waited for a long time. Seeing that Yu Xiaochuan just moved a few steps and did not move again, they could not help but sneer, "Hey, what a useless thing. Apart from speaking tough, you don't dare to..." Before they could finish their words, they saw the strong evil cultivator in front of them leaning forward at a very slow speed, as if he could not stand steadily. The evil cultivators were still confused. They didn't know what was going on until they saw the burly evil cultivator tilt to a certain angle. Then, his head suddenly fell to the ground with a thump. Then, the head rolled in a circle and happened to face the group of dumbfounded evil cultivators. Then he looked at the burly evil cultivator again. Half an hour ago he was still waiting for Yu Xiaochuan to attack. When he was a little impatient, he vaguely felt a cold wind blowing, and then suddenly felt that the scene in front of him was distorted. Then he felt dizzy as if he had fallen down, and then he could no longer control his body. Chapter 1308. The burly evil practitioner also heard the muffled sound, but he didn't know where it came from. The last thing he saw was the horrified expression on his companion's face, and the scene of an ant slowly crawling in front of him. What followed was darkness. His last thought before he died was, "I was facing Yu Xiaochuan, why did I see the face of my companion behind me?" Silence reigned. No one spoke in the spacious square for a while. The shocked expressions on the evil practitioners' faces lingered for a long time. They didn't understand what had happened just now. They watched helplessly as the burly evil cultivator's head was suddenly separated from his body. The wound on his neck looked like it had been scratched by the claws of a ferocious beast. Although the wound was not very neat, it was direct and effective. It was a fatal blow. "Yu Xiaochuan, aren't you a bit too cruel? You just need to teach that kind of fool a lesson. You don't have to kill him, do you?" Xiao Qin's helpless voice broke the strange silence. In fact, Xiao Qin didn't pay much attention just now, so he didn't see Yu Xiaochuan's movements clearly. He only saw a figure suddenly flash, and then there seemed to be 5 thin lines scratching the evil practitioner's neck. Then Yu Xiaochuan returned to his original position. Although Yu Xiaochuan's movements were smooth, his speed was too fast. Except for Xiao Qin, the others only saw Yu Xiaochuan move a few steps. They didn't even see how he moved, let alone what weapon he used. In addition to vaguely seeing Yu Xiaochuan's movements, Xiao Qin also felt a familiar aura from this guy. When Yu Xiaochuan fought with Elder Tsong in the Xiao family, he seemed to have shown this aura. At that time, Xiao Qin didn't quite understand it, but now he knew that it was the aura of a standard cultivator. Yu Xiaochuan was a cultivator like Cheng Menjing or even himself. Brother Xiao, I'm sorry. They said bad things about you and I couldn't control myself, so I killed that brat." Yu Xiaochuan's originally cold expression suddenly disappeared. He turned around and lowered his head as he muttered, "I won't blame you if you're just killing someone who deserves to be killed. However, they're all from the ghost cultivation sect. It'll be troublesome to explain." Xiao Qin glanced at the panicking evil cultivator and felt a headache coming on. Yu Xiaochuan's body trembled slightly, but it was not because he was nervous about killing someone, but because he was afraid that Xiao Chen would really be angry. When he heard what Yu Xiaochuan said, he carefully apologized. "Brother Xiao, can you forgive me this once? I promise. I won't be so rash next time. Forget it, forget it. Anyway, it's just a dead evil cultivator. It's not a big deal. You just need to be more careful in the future. Don't be so rash. Xiao Qin sighed and waved his hand. Xiao Chuan's pitiful look made Xiao Qin unable to stand it anymore. Besides, he only made a move because those people were insulting him, so there was no need to argue with him anymore. Okay. Brother Xiao, I will listen to you in the future. I will kill whoever you want me to kill, otherwise I won't do it easily. Xiao Chuan finally breathed a sigh of relief. A flower-like smile bloomed on his face as he nodded repeatedly in agreement. Xiao Chuan thought to himself, Brother Xiao is really good to me. He can't bear to scold me more, but how did he know that I killed that evil cultivator? When I was in the secular world I often did this and no one could see through it. That's right. Brother Xiao must be more powerful than before. When he pretended to be the White Fox hero, didn't he easily cause headaches for the big families in Songning City? How can my insignificant cultivation be mentioned in the same breath as him? However, it was one thing for Xiao Qin not to care, but those evil cultivators would not let it go. After cleaning up the body of the burly evil cultivator, they immediately ran to Shishan Giant Bull. First, they shirked their responsibility, then they added oil and vinegar to accuse Xiao Qin. Although these evil cultivators did not see who did it, they unanimously believed that Xiao Chuan, the transvestite, was the culprit. After all, among all the people present, he was the most suspicious. Shishan Giant Bull and Song Weizong were supervising the construction of the altar and the magic circle at this time. After hearing the bad news, they suddenly became furious. They immediately put down the work in their hands and rushed in the direction pointed by those evil cultivators, ready to kill Xiao Chuan on the spot. After running a few steps, Shishan Giant Bull saw the back of Xiao Chuan, who was neither a man nor a woman. He was chatting with Xiao Chen at this time and did not notice the movement here at all. When the Shishan Giant Bull saw this scene, it slowed down its pace and its mind started working quickly. In his opinion, since Xiao Chuan and Xiao Chen could talk so happily, their relationship was obviously not ordinary. Shishan Giant Bull did not think wrongly. He only thought that these two people were very likely to be friends for many years. If he killed Xiao Chuan, wouldn't it be a slap in the face to Xiao Qin? However, Shishan Giant Bull thought about it again. Now that his subordinate was killed so inexplicably, he could not just sit back and do nothing. Otherwise, how could he convince the public in the future? Shishan Giant Bull thought about it and hesitated for a while. He felt that he still had to go up and ask. At least he had to show his attitude first. After taking a few steps forward, Shishan Giant Bull looked at the corpse on the ground and then looked at Xiao Chuan's strange clothes. He hesitated for a moment and said, Xiao? Immortal Xiao, hello. Sorry to disturb you. I have something to ask. Before Shishan Giant Bull finished speaking, he was interrupted by Xiao Chen with a wave of his hand. He naturally understood the reason for Shishan Giant Bull's visit. He said lightly, You want to ask about that evil cultivator, right? Yes, I want to know what the situation is. Shishan Giant Bull nodded repeatedly and looked at Xiao Chen eagerly. Oh, I don't like that evil cultivator and he said bad things about my friend, so I killed him. Xiao Chen's tone seemed to be saying that today's weather was good. He turned to look at Shishan Giant Bull with a smile and said, Do you have any other questions? No. It's okay. Shishan Jinyunyu shook his head sullenly. After thinking for a while, he added with a bitter face, But Immortal Xiao, if you want to teach the disciples of our ghost cultivation sect a lesson in the future, can you inform me first? This way I can also understand what mistakes he has made and I can answer to the other disciples, right? Chapter 1309. In fact, Shishan Giant Ox also knew the character of those disciples. When they described what happened, they would shirk responsibility and fabricate facts. However, as a mighty immortal, Xiao Chen would definitely not lie to him. Therefore, what he said should be the real thing at that time. Since his subordinate was the one who made the mistake first and offended Xiao Chen's friend, then he deserved to die. He could not argue any further. At most, when he went back, he would teach everyone a lesson with Xiao Chen's portrait. He would let those arrogant disciples know that no matter who they offended, they should not offend this guy. And the people around this guy. Oh, I see. Xiao Chen nodded indifferently, but in his heart he thought, Do I need to inform you that I killed an evil cultivator? If it weren't for the fact that you still have some value, just the crime of kidnapping Lu Shuangshuang, Yi Xiaoye and Lan Xinxin would be enough to exterminate the entire ghost cultivation sect. Shishan Giant Ox naturally did not know the inner thoughts of Xiao Chen. Instead, he nodded gratefully and said, Thank you, mighty immortal Xiao. You are really magnanimous. I apologize to your friend on behalf of that blind disciple. I will go back to supervise the work first? Wait. Xiao Qin waved his hand and stopped Shishan Giant Ox, who was about to leave. He pointed calmly at the altar in the distance and asked, "How is it going over there? How long will it take to finish? Give me a time. I have other things to arrange here." "Soon it will be done in about 30 minutes. If Exalted Immortal Xiao has any instructions, please let me know. I will immediately ask Old Ghost Song to do it." Shishan Giant Bull was stunned for a moment and replied honestly. He was a little puzzled. It was almost done. What else could Xiao Qin arrange? Did he need other things to carry out the sacrifice besides the altar and the array? It didn't seem to be mentioned in the ancient books. Xiao Qin estimated the time in his heart and ordered, "Since it's almost done, you can start clearing the area now. Ask all the unrelated people to retreat and find a safe place to wait for orders. After the ritual is completed and the portal is opened, then let the people who are preparing to enter the world of immortal cultivation come over, lest they are innocently affected by the heavenly tribulation during the ritual and accidentally die." "Okay. I'll inform them right away." Shishan Giant Ox was suddenly enlightened and hurriedly nodded in agreement. After all, it was the first time for the immortal cultivation sects and the ghost cultivation sects to witness such a large-scale sacrificial ceremony, so they didn't know how powerful the heavenly tribulation was. Fortunately, Xiao Qin was more thoughtful. Otherwise, if those people who wanted to go in were standing at the side of the altar, waiting for the teleportation circle to open, and ended up being killed by the heavenly tribulation for no reason, it would not be worth it. Looking at the back of Shishan Giant Ox leaving quickly, Yu Xiaochuan admired Xiao Qin even more. He said shyly and admiringly with a red face, "Brother Xiao, I didn't expect you to be so awesome now. You're just like the domineering CEO in the online novels. I really didn't choose the wrong person. Staying by your side, I feel so safe." "It's nothing. Just don't make trouble for me in the future." Xiao Qin felt goosebumps all over his body. He quietly stood a little further away from Yu Xiaochuan, then waved his hand and said, "Now hurry up and find a safe place to hide with Beibei and the others. We'll talk about other things after we enter the world of cultivators." Although Xiao Qin was quite helpless about Yu Xiaochuan's eccentric character, there was nothing he could do about him. Therefore he could only send him away as soon as possible, in case he would say something disgusting and attract countless surprised eyes. Frowning, Cheng Minjing reminded him worriedly, "Xiao Qin, you and Jingxian must pay attention to your safety. Be careful. Remember, we are all waiting for the news of your success." Jean Beibei waved her little fist and cheered for Xiao Qin. "Right, cousin-in-law? Beibei will be watching you with her telepathic thoughts in the distance. You and the other sisters must do your best." Jean Beibei waved her little fist and cheered for Xiao Qin. The other girls who did not participate in the ritual looked worried too. Although they all wanted to help Xiao Qin, their bodies did not meet the requirements. Therefore they could only remind Xiao Qin briefly before they left with Yu Xiaochuan. Xiao Qin stared at their departing silhouettes. Suddenly a thought popped up in his mind. To be honest, when Yu Xiaochuan blended into that group of girls, I really couldn't tell that he was a guy for a moment. Putting his thoughts aside, Xiao Qin went to visit Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xianer first. He greeted them and briefly introduced the ins and outs of the whole thing, as well as the matters related to entering the world of cultivators, so that they would know what was going on. As Xiao Qin was not too familiar with these two girls, he did not chat much. He only told Li Xianer that his younger sister, Xiao Xiao, was also here. Since the two of them were old classmates, they could catch up when the teleportation portal was activated in a safe place. Li Xianer was very happy to hear that. Fluttering her long sleeves, she hurried to the place where Xiao Xiao and the other girls were waiting. Nie Xiaoyu was a little shy. She only nodded at Xiao Qin and left. Nobody knew where she was hiding. Seeing that everything outside had been arranged, Xiao Qin led Xin Jingxian and the other girls to the altar's matrix slowly. Since this altar's matrix was temporarily built, it was completely incomparable to the matrix Xiao Qin saw in the west of the Venerable's mysterious land last time. After all, that was a matrix left from the ancient times. It was much more delicate. The more delicate and complicated the matrix was, the less spiritual qi would be absorbed and consumed, and it would be easier to use. However, time waited for no one. Although the matrix was rough, it could only be used. After all, if he wanted to carve it again, he would need to spend more energy, let alone find a ready-made one. The difficulty was no less than that of Yu Xiaochuan. The Ghost Cultivation Sect and the Immortal Cultivation Sect shook hands and made peace. Coming to the altar's matrix, Song Weizong and Shishan Giant Cow nodded at Xiao Chen. Both of them had different expressions. Song Weizong's expression was more solemn. Obviously, he was worried about the next sacrificial ceremony. On the other hand, Shishan Giant Cow's eyes contained a hint of joy. He originally thought that when Xiao Chen said he would bring women with him, he counted Lu Shuangshuang and the others from the ghost cultivation sect as Xiao Chen. He did not expect that this guy would really bring 3 strange girls. Now, the probability of the sacrificial ceremony being successful was even higher. Song Weizong and Shishan Giant Cow had their own thoughts. After briefly introducing the method of using the altar's matrix to Xiao Chen, they retreated to a safe distance. They also handed the ancient books of their respective sects to Xiao Chen so that he could familiarize himself with the sacrificial ceremony. Chapter 13:10. After carefully reading the sacrificial method in the ancient book, Xiao Chen followed its instructions and had the spiritual energy women stand at several key positions in the formation, which were also the eye of the formation. After everyone was in position, Xiao Chen turned his head around to take a look. After confirming that the surroundings had been cleared and there were no longer any disturbances, he cast a camouflage spell. Then he set up a few barriers in the surroundings and walked towards the spot he had left behind. As it was still unknown how powerful the heavenly tribulation was, Xiao Chen planned to use the old dual cultivation method to help the women resist the heavenly tribulation together. Just like how he had resisted the pressure in the venerable realm, it would certainly reduce a lot of the pressure on the women. After sitting down, Xiao Chen gestured for the women to take off their clothes. At first, Lan Xinxin, Yi Xiaoye and Lu Shuangshuang were a little uncomfortable. After all, they were not familiar with the other women and had never taken off their clothes in front of so many people. Yi Xiaoye and Lu Shuangshuang understood Xiao Chen and knew that he would not have any evil thoughts at this time, so they just felt a little embarrassed. Lan Xinxin, on the other hand, was a very careless person and did not expect that taking off her clothes would affect Xiao Chen in any way. She was just a little bashful and felt a little strange. However, while they were hesitating, they saw that Hong Zhu and the other women had calm expressions on their faces and had begun to undress in a very natural manner. Xiao Chen also quickly took off his clothes. They did not want to keep everyone waiting, so they could only blush and slowly unbutton their clothes. Although Hong Yan was also a little bashful, she had already experienced this once in the venerable realm, so she mentally prepared herself and mustered up the courage to also take off her clothes. The slowest one was Lin. Although she had already known that they would need to take off their clothes during the dual cultivation, she had thought that they would at least leave their undergarments on. She did not expect that everyone would actually take off all their clothes in such a short time. Lin, who was already very nervous to begin with, became even more frightened at this moment. Her hands tightly gripped her clothes as she looked at the others in panic. Xiao Chen noticed her strange behavior, but it was not convenient for him to step forward and mediate, so he could only shoot Hong Zhu a meaningful look. Hong Zhu happened to be sitting next to Lin. After receiving Xiao Chen's signal, he turned his head and whispered to Lin, "What's wrong? Why aren't you taking off your clothes? Everyone is waiting for you." Lin was about to cry. She shook her head desperately and said, "No, I don't want to. I'm scared. Can I not take off my clothes?" Hong Zhu sighed helplessly. "If you don't take off your clothes will be damaged later. If you don't want to walk out naked in front of everyone, I advise you to take off your clothes now." All right." Lin thought about the scene of everyone watching from outside the array and immediately shuddered. She finally began to unbutton her clothes with great difficulty. "That's right. Think about the reason you came here this time. Think about your parents. You wouldn't want everyone to fail in the end because of you, right? You wouldn't want everyone to be unable to go back and visit their loved ones, right?" Hong Zhu said in a gentle voice. Thinking about her parents who were anxiously waiting for her at home, Lin's heart trembled. She silently nodded her head and began to take off her clothes even faster. Hong Zhu returned to his seat and winked at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and secretly gave her a thumbs up. Soon everyone was ready. Lu Shuangshuang and the other 2 girls stole glances at the others and discovered that everyone's eyes were very clear, without any evil thoughts. Instead, they were ready to start cultivating at any time. Their emotions gradually stabilized and they no longer let their imaginations run wild. Lin lowered her head, her face as red as a large piece of red cloth. She didn't dare to look at anyone and only wanted to complete the task as quickly as possible so that everything could come to an end. Xiao Chen and the girls sat in a circle. Seeing that everyone was ready, They began to circulate their mental cultivation method and silently recite the incantation to activate the altar's array from the ancient book. After reciting the incantation, the altar's array immediately glowed with a faint white light. Seeing this, the girls didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly closed their eyes and circulated their mental cultivation method. One by one, they placed their hands against each other and began to dual cultivate with Xiao Chen. As more and more people joined in, the originally slightly dim white light of the array gradually grew brighter. When the white light of the array reached its peak, a gale suddenly rose around the altar's array. Even the trees in the distance rustled as a thick layer of dark clouds gathered above the array. Occasionally, a few bolts of bluish-purple lightning would shuttle back and forth in the clouds. It was an extremely terrifying sight, as if something was brewing. It's here. Sensing the abnormality in the array's surroundings, Xiao Chen's heart stirred. He swept his divine sense around and keenly sensed that the air within the altar's array was gradually becoming thinner. In fact, it was even giving off a strong feeling of suffocation. This kind of pressure was much stronger than the pressure in the Venerable Realm's secluded cultivation area. Even Xiao Chen was feeling a little suffocated from the pressure. The expressions of Hongzhu and the other girls also changed slightly. Although everyone was currently sharing the pressure that was distributed to each of them was constantly increasing. If it weren't for Xiao Chen sharing the majority of the pressure, they would have already been crushed into meat patties. As time passed, the white light of the altar's array did not weaken at all. Instead, the thunderclouds above the array grew thicker and thicker. The bluish-purple lightning flowing within the clouds also grew thicker and thicker. The Western Mountain Giant Ox and Song Weizong were the two closest to the altar's array. Although they were still quite a distance away, they could clearly see the surroundings of the array. The two of them had been relying on their superior strength and didn't care too much about the heavenly tribulation. They even wanted to use this opportunity to witness how miracles could happen. However, when they saw the thick thunderclouds that they had never seen before, the two of them felt a little weak. After exchanging a glance, they simultaneously took a few steps back. They didn't want to be implicated and die just because they were standing on the edge of the array. Although they were all outstanding cultivators, they didn't have the confidence that they would be able to escape unscathed under such circumstances. Just when the Western Mountain Giant Ox and Song Weizong thought that they were safe, something unexpected suddenly happened. Boom! The thick thundercloud suddenly let out a deafening boom. An incredibly thick pillar of lightning that could be seen with the naked eye suddenly fell down. Subsequently, a shockwave spread out with the teleportation formation as the center, bringing with it a majestic pressure. Even the nearby trees were swept into it. Chapter 13:11. Not long after, those trees were uprooted and instantly torn to shreds. However, they still could not stop the advance of this powerful qi. The shockwave quickly spread outwards and rushed toward Shishan Giant Bull and Song Weizong with visible ripples. The two of them were scared out of their wits. They immediately flew up and used all the cultivation they had in their lives to shoot backwards at the fastest speed they could reach. Fortunately, the powerful qi gradually weakened after being obstructed by the trees. Only after the two sect masters had retreated several tens of feet did it lose its effectiveness, turning into a gale that ordinary people could withstand. With a whooshing sound, it blew past them and disappeared without a trace. Only then did Song Weizong and the Western Mountain Giant Ox stop in their tracks. Their faces were pale and their lips were blue. They still felt a lingering fear. Both of them could be considered as top-notch experts of the internal martial world, but when they saw such a ferocious and terrifying heavenly tribulation, they were truly shocked. Even though they had managed to avoid it, they still felt a chill run down their backs and cold sweat poured down their backs. At this moment, both Song Weizong and the Western Mountain Giant Ox were thinking of the same thing. If such a thick pillar of lightning struck their bodies, even if they didn't die, they would most likely be crippled even if they were saved. As for that shockwave, if they were to collide head-on with it, they would at least be severely injured. The other onlookers who were standing even further away had looks of terror on their faces. When had they ever seen such a scene before? Some of the evil cultivators who had come to watch the show were so frightened that they took a few steps back. Some of them even thought that it was the end of the world. They used all their strength to turn around and run, fearing that they would be struck by the pillar of lightning if they were not careful. If that happened, they would be turned into charcoal in a matter of minutes. At this moment, in the center of the altar's formation, the people involved, Xiao Qin, Hongzhu, and the other women were also shocked. After all, this lightning tribulation had come too suddenly. Other than Xiao Qin, who knew how to resist it with all her might, the other women were caught off guard by the lightning tribulation. Kerlin was so scared that she even forgot to circulate her mental cultivation method. She just sat there in a daze, looking as if she had lost her soul. She didn't know what to do. Strictly speaking, Lin Ke and Lu Shuangshuang could not be considered as official cultivators. The mental cultivation method they were using was only for the sake of participating in the sacrificial ceremony. After working day and night for the past few days, they had barely managed to learn it after much difficulty. It was already very difficult for them to keep up with the pace of the female cultivators, not to mention the sudden appearance of a lightning tribulation. However, compared to the flustered Kerlin, Lu Shuangshuang was much calmer. Although she felt as if her entire body had been struck by lightning and was in extreme pain, she still clenched her teeth and persevered. Due to Kerlin's sudden departure, Xiaoqian suddenly felt that the pressure on the other women had increased. Even he could not withstand the intense pressure. In a moment of desperation, Xiaoqian's face couldn't help but darken as he berated, Don't just sit there in a daze. Why don't you hurry up and circulate your mental cultivation method to receive it? Do you want to kill the others? I'm scared, sob. Kerlin was already very nervous. After being shouted at by Xiaoqian, her fragile heart directly collapsed. She sat on the ground helplessly, crying non-stop. She couldn't even speak clearly. Xiaoqian's heart sank. He also knew that his attitude just now was too harsh. However, the situation was critical and there was no room for hesitation. He already had to endure more thunder tribulations than the other women. Now that something unexpected had happened to Kerlin, it was very likely that it would affect him and cause everyone else to die. Boom. Before Xiaoqian could think of a suitable countermeasure, the dark thunderclouds in the sky once again emitted a loud sound. Another lightning tribulation as thick as a water bucket came crashing down, directly striking Xiaoqian's body. Xiaoqian, who was caught off guard, involuntarily let out a scream. Even though his willpower was extremely strong, after all, he was only flesh and blood. Even though his body had been tempered thousands of times and had the cultivation of the first level of the profound ascension stage, at that moment, Xiaoqian was still struck by the thunder tribulation and spat out a mouthful of blood. It seemed that it was simply impossible to withstand such a terrible thunder tribulation alone. At this time, Xiaoqian's whole body was shrouded in a huge thunder pillar. His body was shaking like a sieve, and his facial expression was distorted to the point that it was impossible to see what his original face looked like. The pain of being struck by the thunder tribulation was simply unimaginable. In Xiaoqian's mind, the thunder tribulation in the venerable secret realm was simply a comfortable massage compared to this. Old devil song, why do I feel that something is wrong? Outside the altar, looking at Xiaoqian and the others who were indifferent to the thunder tribulation, Shishan Giant Ox could not help but feel a little puzzled. What's wrong? What are you mumbling about? Song Weizong frowned and asked. Those people in the array have suffered 2 thunder tribulations in a row, but they seem to be unscathed and have no reaction at all. Isn't this a little too fake? Shishan Giant Ox pointed to the array that was blocked by Xiaoqian's camouflage and expressed his surprise. Could it be that they were all killed by the thunder tribulation? That's why they are not moving? Recently you have been calling him Immortal Xiao. You almost praised little friend Xiaoqian to the heavens. Why are you so listless now? Song Weizong curled his lips slightly and patted the dust on his clothes. He said faintly with sarcasm, I think you're just saying it. In fact, you don't have much reverence for him. Bullshit. Shishan Giant Ox suddenly became angry and shouted with his eyes wide open, What do you know? I have great respect for exalted deity Xiao, unlike you who call him little friend all the time. Your relationship is so close. Could it be that you think your ability is more awesome than his? Every time he was faced with Song Weizong's sarcasm, Shishan Giant Bull's anger would rise uncontrollably. If it wasn't for the fact that he needed to preserve his strength in order to enter the world of cultivators, he would have killed Song Weizong, this hypocritical bastard, on the spot. Oh, if you say so. Song Weizong answered casually with a calm face. He did not care about Shishan Giant Ox's anger at all. Song Weizong was naturally very worried about the safety of Xiaoqian and the others. However, he was helpless as he was not involved in the situation. He could only close his eyes and wait silently. He could not be bothered with Shishan Giant Ox anymore. However, what the two of them did not expect was that although such a terrifying thunder tribulation had caused Xiaoqian and the women to suffer, the heavens' tribulations seemed to be not satisfied with this. Not long after the second thunder tribulation ended, there was a sudden gust of wind in the array of the altar. Countless small rings of wind continued to gather and gradually formed a huge tornado, wantonly destroying their bodies and minds. Chapter 13:12. If it was just a tornado, it would not be a big deal. But at some point in time, the thunderclouds were no longer rumbling, and snowflakes were falling from the sky. With the help of the tornado, these snowflakes, which were as big as goose feathers, instantly drifted around the magic formation, causing the temperature inside the altar to drop abruptly. This made Xiao Chen and the others feel even worse. As Xiao Chen was still trying his best to resist the attack of the lightning strike, he did not have any extra yuan qi to maintain his body temperature. As the snowstorm continued to wreak havoc, the surface temperature of his body quickly dropped, and soon his whole body became ice cold. His consciousness was also starting to blur. It's so cold. Lu Shuangshuang happened to be sitting next to Xiao Chen. She could clearly feel the chill coming from Xiao Chen's palm, and she could not help but shiver. Sensing that something was wrong, Lu Shuangshuang hurriedly shouted at Kerlin, who was sitting on the other side of her, Don't cry. Give me your hand. Xiao Chen can't hold on any longer. If we don't enter the dual cultivation state soon, he might die. Oh, Shuangshuang, I don't want to dual cultivate anymore. It's so cold, my hand is freezing. It was hard to tell if Kerlin's face was filled with tears or snow water. She sobbed, and her body was tightly curled up into a ball. Her hands were tightly wrapped around her thighs, and she could not stop trembling. She did not want to continue no matter what. Kerlin, what's wrong with you? Hong Zhu, who was sitting on the right side of Kerlin, also shouted anxiously, If you don't want to die, give me your hand. Otherwise, all of us will stay here today and die together with Xiao Chen. At this time, Hong Zhu was also suffering from the cold. She had originally wanted to forcefully press Lin Ke's palm against her own, but after several attempts she was unable to succeed. Either it was blown away by the wind, or Lin Ke herself had retracted her hand. Seeing this, Lu Shuangshuang gritted her teeth. While the tornado was blowing to the other side, she took a deep breath to clear her mind with the cold air. Then she endured the pain and let go of Xiao Chen's hand, quickly stood up and ran towards Kerlin. Striding towards Lin Ke, Lu Shuangshuang forcibly pried her arms away from her thighs, then pressed her right palm against Hong Zhu's left palm. She then turned around and pressed her right palm tightly against Lin Ke's left palm. Only then did she turn around and return to her original position, leading everyone and Xiao Chen to begin their dual cultivation once again. Although everyone had already resumed their dual cultivation, Hong Zhu had been cultivating for a while, but she still could not sense Kerlin's aura. Moreover, it seemed that she could not transmit her devil qi to her. Hong Zhu, who had originally been a little puzzled, tilted his head to look at the motionless Lin Ke. In a flash, he suddenly understood the reason, and immediately felt a little displeased. He hurriedly shouted, Lin Ke, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and circulate the mantra. I forgot. Boo-hoo. After the torment just now, Kerlin was nearly scared to death. Her soul seemed to have flown to some unknown place, and she had completely forgotten about the mantra. No matter how hard she tried, she could not recall it. This is really useless. How about this, recite it out loud after me? Hong Zhu was almost driven mad by Kerlin. Fortunately, she had also seen the mantra for the mantra that she had imparted to Ku Er and Shuangshuang several times, so she immediately recited it aloud to Kerlin beside her. Kerlin recited the mantra after Hong Zhu intermittently, but her heart was still surrounded by fear. Her emotions were fluctuating wildly, and she was unable to calm down. After trying several times, she was still unable to smoothly circulate the mantra. Lin Ke, who was originally in a state of panic and uneasiness, now felt even more disheartened and at a loss as to what to do. Kuer, don't be discouraged. You can definitely do it. Just as Kerlin was about to choose to give up, she suddenly heard a familiar voice. Kerlin quickly turned her head to look, and saw that the voice had come from Xiao Chen, who had just regained consciousness not far away. However, Xiao Chen's expression was extremely ugly at this time. The tribulation lightning in his body had not stopped attacking him, so he had to resist the power of the lightning while also diverting his attention to comfort Kerlin. The little remaining yuan qi in his body was being consumed at an even faster rate. After saying those words of encouragement, Xiao Chen finally could not bear the pressure of the array and fainted. Fortunately, his mantra was still automatically circulating and was not hindered. Otherwise, the remaining few spiritual qi women would really be in trouble. Watching helplessly as Xiao Chen forced a smile on his face turned into a tightly closed eyes in the blink of an eye, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive, Lin's heart was greatly touched. She had been a cowardly and timid person since she was a child. No matter what she did, she would always shrink back, afraid that others would not be satisfied with her. It just so happened that this cautious and timid personality made it easier for others to bully her. Lin Kuo was already used to such a situation. She was used to everyone treating her as if she was invisible. She was used to others mocking her cowardice. She was used to people scolding her, but she had never received any encouragement from others. She did not know why, but Xiao Chen's simple words just now had made Lin feel as if a ray of sunshine had fallen into her heart, gradually restoring her confidence. Even Xiao Chen, who had been tormented by the heavenly tribulation to such an unbearably painful state, was doing his best to maintain the state of dual cultivation, and had even specially come to cheer her on. What else did she have to be afraid of? Taking a deep breath, Lin pulled herself together and began to loudly repeat the mnemonic formula that Hongzhu had given her. Gradually, she vaguely sensed a warm current rising in her dantian, and the circulation of her mental cultivation method was also becoming smoother and smoother. After being unconscious for an unknown period of time, Xiao Chen suddenly sensed a faint aura coming from the palm of his right hand. He, who had been like a lamp that had run out of oil, had also awakened. After that faint aura had circulated in Xiao Chen's body for a small cycle, it once again escaped from the palm of his left hand. Xiao Chen could sense that the nearly dried-up yuan qi in his body had gradually become active because of that aura. Looks like Lin Kuo is finally enlightened. Xiao Chen silently muttered to himself in his heart, finally feeling a trace of gratification. As the second aura flowed into his body, the yuan qi in Xiao Chen's body became even more active, and it began to actively absorb it. This was followed by the third and fourth aura, and with each circulation the amount of yuan qi in his body continued to increase. This also meant that dual cultivation had been restarted. Compared to the gradually awakening yuan qi, Xiao Chen's body had already reached a critical point. Just now, he had withstood the baptism of the lightning tribulation alone, as well as the onslaught of the bitter cold and heavy snow. Even though his body was as hard as a rock, it was now extremely fragile. If someone were to push a palm at him now, Xiao Chen would certainly fall to the ground without any resistance. Chapter 13:13. Xiao Chen gritted his teeth and forcibly held his body that was about to collapse. He wanted to hold on as long as possible, and he didn't want to die like this. Xiao Chen knew very well that according to past experience, as long as he could hold on to this moment, there would be a huge surprise. After enduring for a while, Xiao Chen suddenly felt that the originally weak yuan qi in his body, after receiving the baptism of several auras, began to gradually expand and improve, and became more and more condensed. He could even touch the barrier of the second level of the profound ascending stage. This feeling was like a seedling that had just been in the budding state, after watering and fertilizing a few times, suddenly began to grow wildly, with a sense of vitality, and kept growing. The yuan qi that was in the growth stage was jumping up and down restlessly in Xiao Chen's body. Furthermore, it was like a black hole, taking the initiative to absorb all the lightning power it had received earlier, becoming stronger and stronger. In the end, the yuan qi didn't need to be controlled by Xiao Chen's mental cultivation method at all. It could dominate everything by itself. It felt like it temporarily took over Xiao Chen's body. Even the martial qi and demonic qi sent by the other women were directly swallowed by the yuan qi and transformed into its own energy. In a short period of time, the yuan qi had grown hundreds of times, and it was constantly expanding Xiao Chen's meridians and dantian, and it began to consciously attack the barrier of the second level of the profound ascending stage. Under the impact of the powerful yuan qi, the originally very strong barrier gradually began to crack, and as the cracks continued to increase, the pressure of the yuan qi impact also slowly increased. The autonomous consciousness of the yuan qi seemed to be quite smart. It even knew how to deploy troops. It mobilized all the new yuan qi companions in Xiao Chen's body, and together they went all out to attack the barrier of the second level of the profound ascending stage. Boom! Xiao Chen only felt a loud sound explode in his sea of consciousness. That wave of energy seemed to be cheering and celebrating its victory. Then, like a flood or a ferocious beast, it continued to tear apart the already weak and battered barrier. Until all the barriers were cleared, Xiao Chen also successfully advanced to the second level of the profound ascending stage. However, this wave of yuan qi did not stop here. It split into two and rushed out from Xiao Chen's left and right hands respectively. It surged into the other women's bodies with an earth-shattering force. Xiao Chen was suddenly shocked, but fortunately, although the yuan qi was full of momentum, it did not cause any harm to the women, but helped them wash the impurities in their bodies. After the Yuan Qi had its own consciousness, it seemed to have become diligent and active little hands. Xiaoqin didn't even need to take the initiative to control the dual cultivation, he just let them do it for him. After passing through each girl's body, the Yuan Qi would become stronger, until it went around all the girls' bodies, and then returned to Xiaoqian's body from the other end. As the Yuan Qi continued to shuttle back and forth, strengthening the energy, Xiaoqian felt that his sea of consciousness was constantly rumbling. The successive breakthroughs made him feel comfortable, unusually comfortable. The pain of being struck by lightning had long disappeared, even the raging snow was nothing to Xiaoqian. And Xiaoqian's improvement was also of great help to the other women. They were all driven by the Yuan Qi to break through their realms. Although the difference in strength was huge, they had the ability to resist the heavenly tribulation and no longer felt cold. After an unknown amount of time, the tornado and snow inside the altar's array gradually weakened, the wind gradually stopped, and the snow also slowly stopped. The dark clouds above the array slowly dispersed, revealing a clear sky. And in the altar's array, the white light became even more dazzling than before, and when the dark clouds above completely dispersed, a silver-white portal suddenly broke through the air, and instantly appeared in the middle of the altar's array. Hoo! Xiaoqian let out a long breath of turbid air, slowly opened his eyes, and looked at the huge silver-white portal in front of him, finally feeling relieved. This frightening and powerful sacrificial ceremony in the immortal cultivation world was finally over. Although there were some small mistakes and problems in the middle, his luck was not bad. He clenched his teeth and persevered until the end. Not only did he gain a lot of benefits, he also successfully opened the portal. After the dual cultivation ended, Hongzhu and the other women opened their eyes one after another and sighed in relief. Seeing that the sacrificial ceremony had been a great success, their hearts were filled with indescribable joy. But as happy as they were, they did not forget that they were still in a state of vacuum. So as soon as they woke up, they hurriedly put on their clothes, then stood in the altar's array and stretched their limbs. Strangely enough, although the heavenly tribulation had wreaked havoc with lightning, gales and snowflakes, their clothes were not damaged in the slightest, not even a single snowflake had landed on them, and they looked no different from before. Hey, Kerlin, what happened to you just now? After putting on his clothes, Hongzhu recalled what had happened earlier and was instantly enraged. He angrily walked in front of Lin Kuer and glared at her as he scolded angrily, "Do you know that you nearly caused everyone's deaths?" I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, but I was really scared at the time, so I didn't know what to do. Kerlin was shocked and weakly explained. If you were scared, why didn't you say so earlier? In any case, there are already enough spiritual Qi women. It doesn't matter if you're one more or one less. You should have withdrawn earlier so that you don't come in and harm everyone. You really can't do anything right, but you're good at spoiling things. Hongzhu bitterly complained. Recalling what had happened just now, Hongzhu became angry. At that time, the dual cultivation had been interrupted because of Kerlin's fear, and Xiaoqian had to endure the lightning tribulation alone. They were already in the most critical situation, but this little girl still refused to continue the dual cultivation no matter what. He had tried to pull Kerlin's hand several times, but he had failed every time. If not for Lu Shuangshuang's help, the entire sacrificial ceremony might have failed because of her, and everyone would have died on the spot. Kerlin bit her lower lip, tears welling up in her eyes, but she did not say anything. Quarreling had always been Kerlin's weakness, and she also felt guilty in her heart, so she did not refute Hongzhu. Hongzhu, your words are too hurtful. At this time, Lu Shuangshuang, who was standing to the side, could not bear to watch any longer and stood up for Kerlin. Chapter 13-14. Lu Shuangshuang looked at Hongzhu and angrily said, "It's everyone's first time participating in the sacrificial ceremony, so it's unavoidable to be nervous. Besides, everyone is now safe and sound. Is there a need to target Kuer like this?" As Kerlin's childhood companion, Lu Shuangshuang also knew that she was a little timid, but Hongzhu's words were a little too much. What? You're not going to be blamed for doing something wrong? When Hongzhu saw that there were still people speaking up for Kerlin, he couldn't help but frown and angrily say, "I've already warned everyone that if anyone doesn't have full confidence, they shouldn't blindly participate in this sacrificial ceremony. Besides, what I said just now was not wrong. Even if she doesn't participate in the sacrificial ceremony, the number of spiritual energy women is already enough." There was a reason behind Hongzhu's words. It turned out that a few days ago, when the Hong and Song families had gathered together, they had specially made a precise calculation of the number of people participating in the sacrificial ceremony. From the results of the calculation, the total number of spiritual energy women from the Immortal Cultivation faction, Ghost Cultivation faction, and Awakening Heaven sect was already enough to open the door to the cultivation world. Moreover, this number was also a fluctuating range, meaning that even if 1 or 2 people were to participate, it wouldn't have much of an impact on the sacrificial ceremony. However, if there were more spiritual energy women, it might be able to better guarantee the success rate of the sacrificial ceremony. When Hong Zhu came to this conclusion, he had carefully considered it. Among the spiritual energy women present, Lu Shuangshuang and Kerlin couldn't be considered as cultivators. Although Kerlin's body was full of spiritual energy, if she rashly participated in the sacrificial ceremony, it was very likely that some unpredictable situations would occur, which could easily affect the overall situation. As for Lan Xinxin, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. Although she was only at the beginning of the path of cultivation, the Wang family of Tianfang province was originally an ancient martial arts family, so the younger generation of the family more or less had cultivation experience. Moreover, she had a relatively carefree personality, so there shouldn't be any inexplicable problems. In any case, at the time of the evaluation, Hong Zhu believed that Lan Xinxin was much more reliable than Kerlin, so he had specially looked for the 3 of them and asked them their opinions. In the end, the 3 of them looked at each other and decided to insist on participating in the sacrificial ceremony. Lu Shuangshuang did not want to stand aside and watch as Xiao Qin participated in the sacrificial ceremony. On the other hand, Kerlin thought about how Hong Zhu had helped her parents so much just so that she could participate in the ceremony. It would be too unkind of her to withdraw now. Lan Xinxin, on the other hand, saw that the other 2 women were participating, and she had no reason to withdraw, so she readily agreed. When Hong Zhu saw that the 3 girls had actually chosen to participate in the sacrificial ceremony, it was not good for him to try to persuade them otherwise. However, there was still a faint trace of worry in his heart. He had not expected that the result would still be as she had predicted. Elder sister, that's enough. Since the sacrificial ceremony has been successful, you should speak less. Hong Yan also walked over at this moment, pulled Hong Zhu's sleeve, and dissuaded her in a low voice. Hong Yan, on the other hand, felt quite sympathetic towards Kerlin. After all, this was the first time this little lass had learned about the sacrificial ceremony. It was already very good for her to be able to do this much. I just can't take it anymore. Fortunately, Xiao Qin woke up later and even took us to dual cultivate together. Otherwise, we would have all died here today. Hong Zhu's anger had not yet subsided and he was still very unhappy when he looked at Kerlin. In fact, Hong Zhu had her own reasons for being angry. She had always been very resistant to the sacrificial ceremony since she was young and had always been planning how to extricate herself from this matter. Later on, due to a series of coincidences, she had finally made up her mind to participate in the sacrificial ceremony, but she had never expected that such a dangerous situation would still occur. How could she not be angry? Forget it, Hong Zhu. You can't blame Kerlin for this matter. She's already worked very hard. In fact, I was also a little distracted just now. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Xiao Qin had just finished sensing the condition of his body when he discovered that the girls had actually started arguing. He hurriedly stepped forward to smooth things over. Tisish prioritizing a lover over a friend. Hong Zhu curled her lips and muttered in a low voice. However, she did not say anything else. In truth, she was just venting the fear and dissatisfaction in her heart. She did not really want to do anything to Kerlin. Xiao Qin chuckled and turned around to hold Kerlin's hand. He gently comforted her. I was a little anxious just now and my words were a little harsh. Please don't take it to heart. This is the first time that everyone is participating in the sacrificial ceremony, so it's inevitable that something might happen. Hong Zhu was just too worried and confused. Please don't take it to heart. Kerlin's face blushed slightly as she nodded her head. Her heart was moved. Kerlin had originally thought that Xiao Qin would also teach her a lesson since he was the one who had been the most implicated. She did not expect that he would comfort her instead. She could not calm her emotions and did not even notice that her hand was being held by Xiao Qin. All right, since everyone is fine, let's go out. There must be a lot of people waiting for us outside. Don't let them worry too much. Xiao Qin did not have any other thoughts at this moment. He smiled faintly and let go of Kerlin's hand. He then winked at Hong Zhu. Hong Zhu rolled her eyes at Xiao Qin in annoyance and turned her back to him. Seeing this, Xiaoqin knew that this girl's anger had mostly subsided and that she was just putting on airs. He helplessly shook his head and smiled. After everyone had put on their clothes, Xiaoqin removed the barriers and concealment spells around them and let everyone out. As he turned his head to look at the silver-white portal, Xiaoqin frowned slightly as a question circled in his mind. He could clearly sense that this portal contained an enormous amount of energy. It should have been brought about by the sacrificial ceremony that they had just performed. However, at this moment, that energy was constantly weakening. Compared to the energy that the portal itself possessed, the weakening energy was almost indiscernible. However, after a long period of time, it would inevitably be exhausted. For a moment, Xiaoqin could not figure out what the reason was. His initial deduction was that Lin might have been disconnected during the process, which led to this situation. However, there was no way to stop the continuous loss of energy now. They could only find all the people who had entered the world of cultivators as soon as possible so that everyone could enter as soon as possible. Outside the altar's magical formation, Qing Minjing and the other girls were looking in this direction with their heads raised. When they saw that Xiaoqin and the others had walked out safely, their hearts were finally at ease. The terrifying thunder tribulation and the tornado just now almost scared them to death. Jin Beibei and Tian Wangchuan were shocked from time to time, while Qing Minjing, who was standing next to them, was secretly breaking out in a cold sweat. If the eldest miss knew that Lin was accidentally disconnected during the process of dual cultivation, she would probably be furious like Hongzhu. Chapter 13-15. Xiaoqin naturally knew Qing Minjing's temper, so he did not mention Lin's situation after he came out. He only briefly described the sacrificial process. The other women also knew Xiaoqin's intention, so they also did not say anything. Xiaoqin comforted the women who were worried about the whole process. Then he looked for Xishan Giant Ox and Song Weizong, ready to discuss the next step of entering the portal. Immortal Xiao, you are really amazing. Xishan Giant Ox gave a thumbs up with a look of admiration. He smiled and complimented, I didn't expect this heaven's retribution to be so powerful. We have never heard of or seen it before. Just now, Old Devil Song and I were just watching from a distance and we were particularly frightened. I didn't expect Immortal Xiao to be so powerful that he could resolve it so easily. Song Weizong also admired Xiaoqin in his heart. However, he was born with a sense of pride, so he only nodded slightly in agreement and did not follow suit. Hello, Xiaoqin, I am the master of the Hong family, Hong Dingwei. On the other hand, an old man in red next to Song Weizong looked at Xiaoqin with admiration. He first introduced himself, then sighed from the bottom of his heart, it's all thanks to your help this time. Otherwise, with just us old bones and those few women with low cultivation bases, we definitely wouldn't have been able to successfully open the door to the world of cultivation. Master Hong, you flatter me. I just did a little bit of my strength. Xiaoqin said a few simple pleasantries. He was still worried about the problem of the energy decline of the portal, so he stopped chatting and directly suggested, since the portal has been opened, why don't we arrange for the relevant personnel to go in first? If there is anything else, we can talk after entering the world of immortal cultivation. What do you think, Master Hong? No problem, I will naturally listen to Xiaoqin's instructions. Hong Dingwei agreed with a smile. Thinking that he could enter the world of immortal cultivation soon, Hong Dingwei could not help but feel excited. He thought that he was already old and probably would not have the chance to enter in his lifetime. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, his lifelong wish was about to be realized. Since that's the case, let's gather everyone. Xiaoqin nodded. After thinking for a while, he added, for the sake of fairness, we will arrange for 3 people to go in together each time. 1 person from the Awakening Heaven sect, 1 person from the Immortal Cultivation sect, and 1 person from the Ghost Cultivation sect. No one will object, right? The reason why Xiaoqin suggested this was because he was not sure how long this temporary portal could last. Although the ancient book said that there were 20 to 30 slots, no one knew how many people could actually enter. What if all the people from one of the sects went in first and the portal suddenly closed? Wouldn't the remaining sects suffer a great loss? Hong Dingwei and Song Weizong discussed in low voices for a while, and both expressed their willingness to follow Xiaoqin's arrangements. Moreover, this was indeed the most reasonable and no one would be at a disadvantage. Xishan Giant Ox was actually not very happy in his heart, because only 6 people from the Awakening Heaven sect were going to enter the immortal cultivation world. If 1 person from each of the 3 sects went in, the Awakening Heaven sect would inevitably be the first to enter, and a few people from the Immortal Cultivation Sect and the Ghost Cultivation Sect would stay behind. However, if he raised this point, it would mean that he would openly oppose Xiao Chen's opinion. Shishan Giant Ox had just witnessed Xiao Chen's strength to resist the heaven's retribution. How could he dare to be rash? Besides, the two old guys from the Immortal Cultivation Sect had no objection, so he naturally could not object. Seeing that both sides had no objection, Xiao Chen looked back at the portal. After thinking for a while, he said, "Well, let's hurry up. The first person to enter the Awakening Heaven sect is Miss Cheng Menjing. You guys quickly choose the people to enter. After you have chosen, everyone can start to act." Shishan Giant Ox and Song Weizong hurriedly arranged their own people. Cheng Menjing, who was standing behind Xiao Chen, felt quite puzzled when she heard his distribution. She could not help but ask doubtfully, "Xiao Chen, why do you want me to go first? Shouldn't you go in first to explore the way? Your cultivation is much higher than mine." The immortal cultivation world was an unknown existence. Miss Cheng Menjing always felt that it would be very dangerous inside. If she encountered trouble after entering and Xiao Chen was not by her side, what should she do? "Miss, don't worry. If you encounter danger, you first use your mental cultivation method to run away. I will find a way to meet up with you." Xiao Chen comforted Cheng Menjing. "Well, you have the final say anyway." Cheng Menjing did not understand why Xiao Chen did not choose to enter the immortal cultivation world to wait for her. However, she still obediently agreed. Xiao Chen knew the confusion in Cheng Menjing's heart. He looked around and pulled her to the side. He lowered his voice and said to her, "I have to stay until the end because I have to keep an eye on the Ghost Cultivation sect. I have to prevent their people from taking advantage of this opportunity to make a move." So it's like that. Then you be careful." Cheng Menjing finally understood the reason. Although she was somewhat depressed, what Xiao Chen said was not without reason. If she waited for him to enter the transfer gate, and the Ghost Cultivation sect's people really had evil intentions, she would definitely not be able to deal with them. "You don't have to worry. With my current strength, I can kill all the people from the Ghost Cultivation sect with a casual move of my finger. I can even help them dig their graves." Xiao Chen revealed a mysterious smile and replied confidently, "Che, you're just bragging. Anyway, you don't need to pay taxes for bragging." Cheng Menjing rolled her eyes at Xiao Chen. However, even though she said that, Cheng Menjing still trusted him very much. She just did not know how high Xiao Chen's current strength was. In fact, Xiao Chen was not lying. He was not speaking without thinking. With his current strength, if he wanted to destroy the entire Ghost Cultivation sect, other than Shishan Giant Cow, he would need to spend a little effort to get rid of it. There was no other reason. Just now, when Xiao Chen was helping the female priests, he broke through to the second level of the profound ascending stage with great difficulty. Later on, he broke through all the obstacles like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. With the help of the Yuan Qi accumulated during the dual cultivation, he benefited from the disaster and was pushed to the peak of the sixth level of the profound ascending stage. Therefore, if Xiao Chen really wanted to destroy the Ghost Cultivation sect, it would be a piece of cake. Looking at Cheng Menjing's cute pout, Xiao Chen smiled faintly and gently rubbed her hair. In fact, Xiao Chen had another reason that he did not say. He could feel that the energy of the transfer gate was very unstable. Therefore, he had to stay at the scene. In case something happened later, he could think of a way to hold on for a while. What Xiao Chen was most concerned about at the moment was not the Ghost Cultivation sect messing around. Instead, if the transfer gate suddenly closed and he did not have time to enter, how could he open it again? Chapter 13-16. However, Xiao Chen did not intend to tell Cheng Menjing about this puzzling question, lest she would be hurt by him again. Cheng Menjing took a deep breath. After saying goodbye to Jean Bebe and the other girls briefly, she walked to the portal. After hesitating for a moment, she finally gritted her teeth, closed her eyes and stepped into the portal. Then a white light suddenly flashed, and Cheng Menjing's figure disappeared in the portal instantly. The Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect had also finished their arrangements at this moment. The former chose to send Hong Dingwei to enter first, while the latter chose to send their leader, West Mountain Giant Bull, as the vanguard. The two of them stood in front of the portal and looked at each other. Then they stepped into the portal expressionlessly and disappeared in the white light silently. Seeing that West Mountain Giant Bull and Hong Dingwei entered the portal at the same time, Xiao Chen finally felt a little relieved. Originally, Xiao Chen was worried that West Mountain Giant Bull would suddenly attack Cheng Menjing after entering the world of immortal cultivation and threaten him to give in by capturing her. However, since Hong Dingwei was here now, he thought that he would not sit by and do nothing. Miss Cheng's safety could still be guaranteed. However, to Xiao Chen's surprise, when Qing Minjing, Hong Dingwei and West Mountain Giant Bull stepped into the portal, he could clearly feel that the energy of the portal suddenly weakened a lot, and the entire portal seemed to be a little smaller. After thinking for a while, Xiao Chen finally understood why the energy of the portal kept weakening. It was not because Kurlin's dual cultivation was interrupted just now, but because the portal was originally a body of energy. Originally, it needed to consume a small amount of energy to maintain the state of the portal. Every time a person was teleported away, a part of the energy would be consumed instantly. Xiao Chen made a simple calculation based on the energy consumption of Qing Minjing and the other two. He found that they had to hurry up. Otherwise, it was very likely that the portal would run out of energy and close before all 30 of them could enter. Of course, apart from Xiao Chen, no one else noticed the slight change in the energy and volume at all. They continued to arrange the candidates and lined up in front of the teleportation gate in an orderly manner, walking in according to the sequence. Tang Tang, Song Weizong and Mad Devil of Xishan entered the portal for the second time. As Xiao Chen expected, after the three of them entered, the energy of the portal weakened a lot. Xiao Chen furrowed his brows. He first instructed everyone to speed up and make the best use of the time to line up and enter the arena. Then he called Miss Xing over. Sect leader Xing, after I go to the world of cultivation, Jean Beibei and the others will be in your care. Xiao Chen said with a smile as he looked at the girl walking towards him. What did you say? I will take care of them? Miss Xing thought that there was something wrong with her ears. She looked at Xiao Chen in surprise. Yes. Xiao Chen nodded. He pointed at Jean Beibei and the others and said with a smile, after all, you are a few years older than them. You have better life experience and adaptability. Although concubine Xia is also like a big sister, I think you are more reliable. You know the reason. Actually, among all the girls, Xia Fei was the oldest. If it wasn't for the fact that she always stared at the girls lecherously, teased them from time to time, and even tried to take advantage of them, Xiao Chen would really be willing to let her be the big sister. What? Can I really do that? Miss Xing was in disbelief. She had not come back to herself from the shock yet. Although she would treat Jean Beibei and the other girls well even if Xiao Chen had not asked for it, it was beyond Miss Xing's expectation that Xiao Chen would entrust them to her voluntarily. Miss Xing thought to herself, does it mean that I have been appointed as his first wife since Xiao Chen chose me to take on such an important task? Of course you can. You must believe in your own abilities. Seeing that Miss Xing seemed to be secretly enjoying herself but trying to hold it back, Xiao Chen was rather confused. He did not know what was wrong with her, but he did not think too much of it and simply encouraged her. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Chen pointed at the bay spiritual beast that was pacing back and forth not too far away. He said to Miss Xing, oh right, you can use that big white horse. You've ridden it before anyway so you know how to control it. Although this fella is a little dumb and looks a little stupid, it's quite fast. It'll be great to use as a means of transportation. Nay, although it was a little far from Xiao Chen, the bay's spiritual beast's ears were still very sensitive. It happened to hear Xiao Chen bad-mouthing it, so it immediately neighed at him unhappily and shook its head forcefully. Obviously it was protesting. Oh, I got it. Xing Chick was still immersed in the joy of becoming the first wife. Xiao Chen's words went in one ear and out the other. She only nodded and giggled. After Xiao Chen was done giving instructions, he glared at the bay's spiritual beast and turned to observe the situation at the teleportation gate. He was chatting with Miss Xing just now, so he did not bother to see who was going through the teleportation gate first. Now it was the Heavenly Awakening Gate's turn. Xiao Chen fixed his eyes and saw that the one who was going through the teleportation gate this time was Jia Tuyao, who had been silent and had no sense of existence before. Standing in front of the teleportation gate, Jia Tuyao glanced at Xiao Chen resentfully and unwillingly. Obviously he still held a grudge against him. Jia Yudo chose to let Jia Tuyao enter the immortal cultivation world and fight hard. In fact, Jia Tuyao also approved of it. Now that he was being ignored by everyone in the family, it was not a good feeling. If he could make a name for himself in the immortal cultivation world, it would not be impossible for him to take back the power of the Jia family. However, after arriving at the Heavenly Awakening Gate, Jia Tuyao found out that this trip to the immortal cultivation world actually involved Xiao Chen. Jia Tuyao, who originally wanted to find an opportunity to ride on the Heavenly Awakening Gate's coattails, immediately stopped and did not dare to do anything. He could only choose to temporarily keep a low profile and hide among the crowd, for fear that Xiao Chen would vent his anger on him. However, now that he was about to enter the immortal cultivation world, no matter how powerful Xiao Chen was, he could not do anything to him. Naturally, Jia Tuyao revealed all the resentment hidden in the bottom of his heart. In Jia Tuyao's view, no matter how powerful Xiao Chen was, he would be nothing in the immortal cultivation world. The immortal cultivation world was full of dangers. A guy like Xiao Chen, who was arrogant and domineering, might be killed the moment he entered the immortal cultivation world. Naturally, Xiao Chen would not take Jia Tuyao's provocation seriously. This guy's purpose of entering the immortal cultivation world was as obvious as a dot of ink on a piece of white paper. He thought that no one could see it. Chapter 13-17. However, Xiao Chen had his own considerations about Jia Tuyao. If Jia Tuyao was thrown into the immortal cultivation world, he would not have the opportunity to do evil in the Jia family. In this way, Jia Muzhen would not be able to smoothly take over the Jia family. As for Jia Tuyao, after he entered the immortal cultivation world, Xiao Chen was too lazy to do anything to him. He would just let him run his own course. Xiao Chen really did not believe that this kind of guy with a lack of intelligence would suddenly become successful. After Jia Tuyao entered the portal, another person from the Ghost Cultivation sect and another person from the Immortal Cultivation sect entered. Then Yu Xiaochuan stood in front of the portal and waved happily at Xiao Chen, which was a sharp contrast to Jia Tuyao's attitude just now. Xiao Chen also responded with a smile, but the smile was a little forced. At this time he could clearly feel that Yu Xiaochuan had a lot of interest in him since he practiced the Chrysanthemum Treasure Book. Was it really like the name of the secret book, that people who practiced it would only have feelings for chrysanthemums in the future? But why did it have to be him? For this point, Xiao Chen had always been puzzled, but there was no good way to solve it at the moment. He could only enter the immortal cultivation world and take it one step at a time. After Gong Sun Yen also entered the portal, all the members of the awakening sect except for Xiao Chen had entered. As more and more people entered the immortal cultivation world, Xiao Chen's expression became more and more serious. He could feel that the energy consumption of the portal was getting faster and faster. Obviously, it was not enough for all the remaining people to enter. Xiao Chen looked around. West Mountain Giant Ox and West Mountain Mad Devil of the Ghost Cultivation sect had entered first. Nie Xiaoyu, an old demon of West Mountain, had also passed through the portal. The remaining people were passers-by that Xiao Chen did not know. Some of them were the guys who laughed at Yu Xiaochuan just now. At this time, their faces were full of tension and excitement. Among the cultivation sects, the patriarchs of the Hong family and the Song family had already disappeared. Song Qingshu and third young master Hong, whom he had met in the Venerable Realm last time, had also entered one after another. The last person to enter was a woman in black. Hong Zhu, Li Xiener, and a few other younger disciples of the cultivation sects remained at the portal. Xiao Chen took a few steps towards the portal and stared at it without blinking. At this time it was the cultivator's turn. Li Xiener took 2 steps forward, stood in front of the transfer gate and took a deep breath. Then, with a resolute expression, she stepped through the gate. With a flash of white light, she disappeared. The light of the portal visibly fluctuated, and the energy suddenly decreased by a large amount. Xiao Chen's expression changed. He could clearly feel that the portal was about to reach its critical point. He estimated that it could only accommodate 1 or 2 people at most. After that, it would inevitably close. At this time, a thin and small evil cultivator from the Ghost Cultivation sect slowly walked towards the portal. Xiao Chen pondered for a moment and made a decision. He used his movement technique and quickly rushed towards the portal. When they passed by Hongzhu, Xiao Chen even turned around and shouted at her, "Let's go!" Hongzhu was stunned. Then she saw Xiao Chen rush to the portal, push away the thin evil cultivator who was about to enter, and enter the portal himself. In an instant he disappeared. What the F***ck? What's going on? Didn't we agree that it would be one sect's turn each time? Which sect is this guy from? Why did he go in first? The Ghost Cultivation sect disciple who had been pushed to the ground immediately flew into a rage. He stood up, pointed at the portal and shouted angrily, "Your spot has been taken. It's my turn next." Just as the skinny evil cultivator was cursing, the disciple behind him, who was originally in line, shouted. He naturally wanted to rush into the portal. F***ck your mother's leg. I haven't entered yet. How can you have a spot? How could the thin evil cultivator let him go first? While cursing, he hurriedly rushed into the portal. You were the one who was robbed. What does it have to do with me? I should be the next one to enter. The cultivator grabbed the thin evil cultivator and tried to rush in before him. Don't talk nonsense with me. If I can't enter, don't even think about entering. Although the skinny evil cultivator looked weak, his strength was not small. He simply grabbed the clothes of the cultivator sect's disciple and refused to let him go. At this time, the disciples of the two sects who were waiting behind saw the deadlock in front of them couldn't help but start to complain and insult each other. Originally, the two sects had accumulated hatred and friction for a long time. At this time, the sect leaders or elders of the two sects, and the situation was getting out of control. The skinny evil cultivator and the disciples of the cultivation sects pushed and shoved each other. No one knew who punched the other first, but the already angry crowd instantly became entangled in a fight. Dust flew everywhere and the whole scene was extremely chaotic. Seeing Xiao Qin rush out and disappear into the portal, Hongzhu, who was standing at the back, was stunned for a moment. What happened? Recalling how Xiao Qin had yelled at her and told her to hurry up and leave, Hongzhu's eyes turned and he suddenly came to his senses. He realized that the situation might be a little off, so he couldn't be bothered to pay any more attention to the disciples of both sides who were fighting in full swing. He immediately used his movement skill and circled around the scene of the fight. He arrived in front of the portal and with a leap, he directly jumped into it. After Hongzhu entered, the portal shook violently. Finally, its energy was exhausted and it began to slowly close. When the disciples of the Immortal and Ghost Cultivation sects saw this, they all wanted to get a share of the loot before the portal closed. They desperately tried to rush in, but the opponents beside them were unwilling. They pulled and pulled each other and for a time they were all held back, unable to enter. Just as the portal closed halfway, a white shadow suddenly flashed in front of the struggling disciples. That white shadow passed by them and rushed straight into the portal. Everyone turned their heads in unison and saw that the white shadow had squeezed into the portal just as it was about to close. However, because it was too big, although the front half of the white shadow had squeezed in, the back half of the white shadow was stuck in the portal. When everyone saw this scene they were a little stunned. Little girl Xing, who was standing at the side, was also stunned. When she looked over, she realized that the person who was risking his life to enter the immortal world was not a person, but a horse. Furthermore, judging from the horses that was constantly twisting and struggling outside the portal, this was clearly the big white horse that Xiao Qin had mentioned to give to her as a mount. Little girl Xing was a little confused. What was going on with this horse? Why would it suddenly make such a move? Could it be that it had seen Xiao Qin leave and missed him so much that it wanted to follow him in? Chapter 13-18. However, there was no time for Miss Xing to think too much. Because it was stuck by Zay's but the transfer gate could not be closed. Because the transfer gate could not be closed, the array on the ground began to emit green smoke. Furthermore, there were a few bolts of blue and purple lightning flashing back and forth near the transfer gate, emitting a sizzling sound. From the looks of it, if this were to continue, the entire spell formation would very likely explode. The situation was urgent, but the disciples of the Immortal Cultivation sect and Ghost Cultivation sect were still in a daze. Their brains had short-circuited. Miss Xing naturally could not sit by and do nothing. Even though she did not know how powerful the explosion would be, she was not willing to take this risk. Frowning, Miss Xing decisively activated her mental cultivation technique and gathered demonic qi in her palms. Then she pushed towards Zay's butt. Bang! Following the muffled sound of a collision, Zay's lower body was finally sent into the transfer gate by Miss Xing's palm. With a flash of white light, it disappeared. At the same time, the transfer gate closed and disappeared into thin air without a trace. It was as if it had never been there in the first place. At the same time, the disciples of the Immortal Cultivation sect and Ghost Cultivation sect saw that they could no longer enter the cultivation world and seemed to have woken up again. They all sighed in disappointment and stopped fighting. Then they sat down on the ground in a daze, not knowing what to do next. Wow! This is great, I finally entered at the last moment. Seeing a flash of white light, Zay, who had already returned to its original appearance, was overjoyed. It raised its head to the sky and let out a long roar. Xiao Qin, just you wait. Once I successfully raise my cultivation, I will definitely find you and teach you a good lesson. Zay remembered the humiliation of being used as a mount by Xiao Qin. At this moment, it had already thought of 108 ways to torture Xiao Qin. Oh, that's right. Also, the fellow who used demonic qi to hit my butt. Even though I didn't see your face, I will come back for you sooner or later. Zay felt a burning pain on its butt and couldn't help but mutter to itself, when that time comes, I will also let you have a taste of being spanked, humph. In a forest on the outskirts of a remote place in the immortal cultivation world, a gust of wind suddenly blew past. After the gale subsided, the sky became overcast, and lightning flashed and thunder roared, as if a thunderstorm was about to happen. Then, in an open space in the forest, a silver-white light that looked like lightning appeared out of thin air, tearing the space apart and gradually forming the shape of a portal. After the portal appeared, two figures gradually emerged from it. The former was Xiao Qin, who had seized the last opportunity to rush into the portal, while the latter was Hong Zhu, who had followed closely behind him and picked up the spoils. After sending the two of them to the surface of the forest, the portal slowly closed and disappeared. Who hit my head? Before Hong Zhu could steady himself, he felt something smashing into the back of his head. Caught off guard, he couldn't help but cry out in pain. Turning his head to look, Hong Zhu discovered that there was no one behind him, only a bulging bundle that had fallen to the ground, rolled a few times before coming to a stop not far away. He couldn't help but ask in bewilderment, "What is this?" "This is the culprit that smashed into you just now," Xiao Qin, who was in front, casually replied. When he had turned around to look at the portal, he had just happened to see the bundle fly out with a whoosh before the portal closed, accurately smashing into Hong Zhu's head. Hong Zhu pursed his lips in boredom, then walked over and picked up the bundle. He opened it and found that it was filled with top-grade natural treasures. Slightly confused, he tilted his head and thought for a moment, then muttered to himself, I feel like I've seen this bundle somewhere before, but I can't remember where. Let me see." Xiao Qin took a few steps closer, swept his gaze across the bundle, and said with sudden understanding, "Oh, these are the heavenly treasures that I had collected in the Venerable One's secret realm. However, I remember that I had hung this bundle around the neck of the Baizé spiritual beast. How did it end up here?" After thinking for a while, Xiao Qin guessed that little Xing must have thrown it here before the portal closed so that these items could be put to use in the cultivation world. After making this deduction, Xiao Qin didn't think too much about it. He simply tied up the bundle and put it away, then began to look around. After carefully observing his surroundings, Xiao Qin couldn't find any traces of Cheng Menjing and the others. Even the great ox of the Western Mountain and Song Weizong were nowhere to be seen. He was immediately very surprised. Logically speaking, before he arrived, they shouldn't have run around, especially Cheng Menjing and Tang Tang. They should have been waiting for him. But now he couldn't see a single one of them. What was going on? "Little brother Xiao Qin, where are the others? Could it be that they couldn't wait for us so they left first?" Hong Zhu didn't have much interest in the treasures of heaven and earth. He stood up and looked around and also found something wrong. At this time, the two of them were in an extremely desolate jungle. Apart from the withered branches and trees around them, it was completely deserted and empty. Not to mention the people who had been teleported here before, even an ordinary beast could not be seen. Impossible. They are unfamiliar with this place. How dare they act casually? Xiao Qin shook his head and flatly denied Hong Zhu's statement. The reason why Xiao Qin was so sure was that he knew both the Immortal Cultivation Sect and the Ghost Cultivation Sect better. Song Weizong and the others were upright, relatively organized and disciplined. They were also more peaceful and steady. Before Xiao Qin came in, they would definitely not act blindly. On the other hand, the group of people from the Ghost Cultivation Sect were the kind of people who wanted to do evil but had no guts. Although Shishan Giant Ox had come here before, he had always been in awe of the immortal cultivation world. Moreover, he was afraid of Xiao Qin's crushing strength, so he wouldn't rashly choose to leave. Naturally, he could only wait for Xiao Qin, the leader, to come in before making any plans. As for Yu Xiaochuan and Cheng Menjing, there was no need to mention them. They had always regarded Xiao Qin as the core, so it was absolutely impossible for them to leave first. If they didn't leave first because they couldn't wait, then could it be? Hong Zhu frowned slightly. He didn't finish his words, but his expression was a little uneasy. Probably not. Although Hong Zhu didn't finish his words, Xiao Qin already knew what he was trying to say. Those people didn't leave of their own accord. So, unless something special happened, they were forced to leave. Chapter 13-19. However, Xiao Qin had already carefully observed the scene just now and did not find any signs of a fight. Cheng Menjing and the other women did not leave any signs behind either. This place was so desolate that it was unrealistic for someone to wait here and capture them, so the possibility of them being coerced was next to none. If they didn't leave on their own and they weren't captured, then how did they disappear? Hong Zhu was a little discouraged as she pouted and said in a slightly peeved tone, "Could it be that they suddenly grew wings and flew away together? There's another possibility. Xiao Chen pondered for a while, rubbing his chin as he analyzed. After all, this is the first time we've opened this portal, so no one knows what will happen after we enter. Perhaps everyone was sent to different places after crossing over, and scattered around the area. Then why did I end up in the same place as you? Hongzhu asked in confusion. Suddenly, she giggled and glanced coquettishly at Xiao Chen as she said, "Could it be that this portal wants us to have a world of just the two of us?" Black lines immediately appeared on Xiao Chen's forehead as he said, "It's also possible that we happen to be in a group of two and were teleported to a certain place. The two of us happened to be the last ones to enter, so we ended up in the same place." After ruling out the possibility that the people before him had left on their own or had been coerced, Xiao Chen could not think of any other possibilities. He could only speculate that everyone had landed in different places after crossing through the portal. If he looked around the area, he might be able to find traces of them. "Alright, let's look around then." Hongzhu stretched lazily. Suddenly, he recalled Xiao Chen's abnormal behavior before entering the teleportation gate. He moved closer to Xiao Chen's ear and whispered with a mischievous smile, "Right, little brother Xiao Chen, you suddenly rushed into the teleportation gate just now. Did you already notice that the teleportation gate is about to close?" "Yes." Feeling an unbearable itch after being blown on by someone, coupled with Hongzhu's seductive voice, Xiao Chen knew that this little girl was starting to play tricks again. He could only helplessly nod his head in response. "Little brother Xiao Chen, you're in the wrong here. Why didn't you tell big sister earlier when you discovered something?" Hongzhu rebuked as she poked Xiao Chen's head. "Didn't I tell you? I told you to leave before I went in." Xiao Chen protested innocently. "You only shouted that one word. Who knows what you're saying?" Hongzhu coquettishly rolled her eyes at Xiao Chen before she proudly puffed out her chest. She pinched Xiao Chen's nose and said with a smile, "Fortunately, big sister is smart and quick-witted. I followed you in just in time. Otherwise, I would have been thrown off by a bad boy like you." Hongzhu, stop messing around. Xiao Chen gently pushed Hongzhu's finger away and said with a slight headache, "I think we should leave this place first and meet up with the others as soon as possible. Otherwise, if they run into any trouble, it will be hard to solve when the time comes." Xiao Chen really had no idea how to deal with Hongzhu's teasing. He simply felt that this little girl was a little too undisciplined. What kind of situation was this? Yet she still had the mood to think about such messy things. They can't see you anyway, so they won't run around blindly. What are you in such a hurry for?" Hongzhu curled her lips. She was very bored by Xiao Chen's lack of interest. She looked around and suggested with great interest, "Why don't we take advantage of this opportunity where no one is around and have some fun in the wild? This big sister has never had any wild sex before." Cough cough cough. "I don't think this suggestion is very good. Let's talk about it later." Xiao Chen choked and coughed repeatedly. His face had turned red. He naturally did not dare to take the initiative to respond to Hongzhu's challenge. He hastily put away the bag containing the natural treasures and quickly left in a random direction. It was as if he had run into a ferocious beast and was fleeing in panic. "Sai, you're really unromantic. How boring." When Hongzhu saw that Xiao Chen did not take the bait, he also lost interest in continuing to tease him. He leisurely followed behind Xiao Chen and plucked a green foxtail grass from God knows where. He teased Xiao Chen while admiring the surrounding scenery. As Xiao Chen was not sure of the location of Cheng Menjing and the other women, nor was he clear about the size of this forest, he could only release his divine sense to the greatest extent possible to explore. Moreover, he remained vigilant at all times so that he could deal with any unexpected situations that might arise at any time. However, what was strange was that after Xiao Chen circled back and forth and covered the entire forest with his divine sense, he did not find any trace of Cheng Menjing and the other women. Moreover, he did not even find any trace of the people from the Immortal Cultivation Sect or the Ghost Cultivation Sect. Xiao Chen frowned deeply. He felt a little uneasy in his heart. Could it be that the situation was different from what he had imagined? Could it be that the eldest miss and the others had really been captured by the people from the Immortal Cultivation world? But that didn't make sense either. If it was as he had inferred and they had been teleported here in groups of two, it would be impossible for all of them to be captured at once. There must have been some traces left behind. If it was because he had entered too late and the others were all captured together, then it was even more unrealistic. Big Miss and Yu Xiaochuan were both real cultivators. Unless the opponent's level was extremely high enough to make them lose the ability to resist, either of them would be able to resist for a while when they encountered the enemy. How could they be so easily defeated by the enemy? Taking a step back, even if the people from the immortal cultivation world had sent a large number of experts to specifically capture the people who had been teleported here from the inner martial world, how did they know that someone would coincidentally be teleported to this place at this moment? It must be known that there was no channel for information transmission between the immortal cultivation world and the inner martial world. After all, they were two completely different existences. Otherwise, the immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect would not have spent so much effort to study ancient books for so long and finally deduced the method to use the teleportation gate. Xiaoqin, we've already wandered around for 2 hours. Why haven't we met anyone else yet? Could it be that they've all? Hongzhu, who was walking behind Xiaoqin, hesitated for a long time before he finally spoke with a grave expression. At this moment, she finally realized that the situation was a little strange. She gradually lost the mood to play and threw the green foxtail grass to the side. She did not dare to lower her guard anymore. It can't be. Although there are many experts in the immortal cultivation world and people with outstanding strength can be found everywhere, Song Weizong and Shishan Giant Ox are not easy to deal with. Furthermore, Qing Minjing and the other's strength is not low either. So I think they should have been teleported to a place that is relatively far away. Xiaoqin replied cautiously. Chapter 13:20. Although he said so, in truth, Xiaoqin did not have much confidence in himself. After all, this was his first time in the world of immortal cultivators and he was not very familiar with this place, so he did not dare to jump to any conclusions. Hongzhu nodded. She could naturally tell that Xiaoqin was trying to comfort her, but she did not expose him. Instead, she secretly prayed in her heart, hoping that everyone would be safe. As the two continued walking, the trees began to grow sparse. Not far away they seemed to have reached the edge of the forest. Xiaoqin suddenly stopped, closed his eyes and sensed with rapt attention for a moment. Seeing this, Hongzhu was just about to ask, when Xiaoqin opened his eyes and pointed in a certain direction to the east, saying, "I've discovered some movements about 3 kilometers to the east, but they don't seem to be our people. Since we can't find them, let's go over there and take a look." It turned out that when they had arrived at this location, Xiaoqin's divine sense, which had already expanded to its limit, had suddenly sensed some houses in the distance. It seemed to be a town and there was a bustling crowd inside. However, they were all unfamiliar faces and seemed to be the residents of the town. "Okay, I'll listen to you." Although Hongzhu did not know why Xiaoqin was able to sense the commotion from so far away, in this unknown environment, she had a natural sense of trust towards Xiaoqin. Thus, she obediently nodded her head. After the two had come to a decision, they carefully approached the east. After walking for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, a small town appeared in front of them. Although the size of this town could not be considered large, it was quite lively with people coming and going. It looked a bit similar to a market in the secular world, except that the people inside were all dressed in ancient clothes. Xiaoqin and Hongzhu glanced at each other, before stepping into the town as if nothing had happened. Pretending to be leisurely strolling on the streets, they stealthily observed the situation around them. After entering the town, Xiaoqin did not dare to be too ostentatious. He could sense that there were quite a few cultivators in the vicinity, so he did not choose to release his divine sense to investigate. Although the surrounding cultivators did not seem to have a high level, once they reached the level of Xiaoqin, their vitality would be restrained and they would return to their natural state. Generally, one would not be able to see their true level. After all, Xiaoqin didn't know much about the situation here, so he didn't want to overestimate himself. If he alarmed an almighty who was stronger than him, it wouldn't be worth it. Take a look, take a look. You won't suffer a loss with 2 crystals and you won't be fooled with just 2 crystals. Before the two of them had taken a few steps, they heard a peddler's voice coming from the street not far away. Judging from the tone of the voice, it seemed to be the voice of a hawker. I didn't expect this place to be so similar to the secular world. They even use such old-fashioned advertising words. Hongzhu was instantly amused and his nervousness was greatly alleviated. With a smile he teased, "Next I'll definitely sell all of the items in my shop for 2 spirit crystals. It'll be a true value for money, and there won't be another shop like this, right?" Xiaoqin smiled, but before he could answer the peddler continued to shout, "You can't buy anything with 2 crystals. All the items in your shop start at 3 crystals. Don't miss this opportunity. If you buy it, you'll be taking advantage of it, and if you don't, you'll be suffering a great loss." Oh, what the hell is this? What happened to the trust between people? Hongzhu staggered and almost fell to the ground. He suddenly felt unwell. Why didn't this guy follow the rules? Could it be that all the peddlers in the cultivation world are weirdos? Perhaps this is their style. It's better for you to get used to it as soon as possible. Xiaoqun smiled and shook his head. He was also somewhat speechless towards this peddler. Forget it, he's just a peddler, I don't feel like arguing with him. Hongzhu lightly snorted and then asked with some doubt, but what are the spirit crystals he mentioned? What are they? When Xiaoqun heard this term he was also somewhat puzzled. But since Hongzhu had asked, he waved his hand and said, "Don't ask me, it's also my first time here. In any case we have nothing to do for the time being, so we might as well go and take a look." Xiaoqun was also quite interested in the spirit crystals that the peddler was talking about. Could it be that the cultivation world didn't use the currency of the secular world, and instead used spirit crystals as payment? If that was really the case, he had to find a way to obtain some spirit crystals and carry them with him. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to even take a single step. Two handsome men and beautiful women, please feel free to look around. These goods just arrived yesterday and the quality is excellent. There's absolutely nothing to complain about. If you buy more, I can even give you a discounted price. Seeing Xiaoqun and Hongzhu walking over from a short distance away, the peddler immediately stood up and greeted them enthusiastically. "Little brother, we don't have any spirit crystals. We just wanted to ask." Hongzhu shook his head with a smile. Just as he was about to ask what exactly spirit crystals were, he was interrupted by the vendor before he could finish his question. "It doesn't matter if you don't have any spirit crystals. I support the exchange method with spirit crystal certificates, or you can use spirit crystal cards to directly transfer money. You can choose whatever you want," the peddler said impatiently. Then he made a knowing expression and sighed. Indeed, no one likes to carry spirit crystals around these days. Those things are too heavy. It's really not as convenient as small cards, I understand. Hongzhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. The peddler probably thought that they didn't bring any spirit crystals with them, so he wanted to use other payment methods. That was why he introduced so many payment methods in one go. But he didn't have any spirit crystal cards. While Hongzhu and the peddler were talking, Xiaoqun took a look at the goods on display. He discovered that they were all unknown herbs and some daily necessities. Perhaps because the spirit qi of heaven and earth was relatively abundant in the cultivation world, many of the herbs seemed to be of good quality even though their grades were relatively low. Seeing that Hongzhu didn't get anything out of the peddler, Xiaoqun explained, "Oh, we're not here to buy anything. We just want to understand." The peddler stared at Xiaoqun for a moment. Before he could finish speaking, he immediately put on a look of sudden realization and said in a low voice, "Oh, I understand. You're short on spirit crystals, right?" Xiaoqun was startled. Thinking that what the peddler said was not wrong, he nodded. "You should have said so earlier." The peddler patted Xiaoqun's shoulder in a very familiar manner. He carefully looked left and right, then approached Xiaoqun and said in a low voice, "I can help you apply for a small loan or mortgage. If you want to sell a kidney or other organs, I can also introduce you. But you'll have to pay a small fee first. As you know, I've been very strict recently." Chapter 1321. Holy sh*T, you really can do any kind of business. It seems that no matter who comes to your place, they can't leave without paying a bit of money, right? Xiaoqun was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth and couldn't help but blurt out. He couldn't believe that an ordinary peddler could actually have so many connections. It turned out that this was just a shell company. Hey, how can you say that? Do you know how to chat? You don't have spirit crystals and yet you're so poor and arrogant. What's there to be arrogant about? Are you in the right or something? Hearing Xiaoqun's words, the peddler suddenly became anxious. He widened his eyes and pointed at Xiaoqun's nose as he scolded. "Forget it, Xiaoqun, let's go somewhere else and ask. Don't bicker with him." Seeing that the two were about to quarrel, Hongzhu was afraid that the matter would escalate and become difficult to resolve. After all, they were currently in the cultivation world and were unfamiliar with the people in the place. So he hurriedly pulled Xiaoqun away. "Tisich, you don't have money and yet you're asking all sorts of questions. What a waste of my saliva." Looking at the two disappearing figures, the peddler rolled his eyes and cursed a few times. He couldn't be bothered to bicker with them and continued to loudly hawk his wares. After walking for a while, Hongzhu felt a bit hungry. However, he didn't have any spirit crystals on him. So, he could only rub his stomach and stare at the stalls selling steamed buns and sesame seed cakes on the side of the road in an attempt to quench his thirst. Seeing Hongzhu's pitiful appearance, Xiaoqun helplessly smiled. He pointed at a nearby restaurant and said, "Let's just go in and eat something. We can also find out what spirit crystals are while we're at it. Maybe that restaurant accepts money from the secular world? Then, alright. Let's go in and take a look. Although Hongzhu didn't hold much hope in his heart, he had no other choice but to give it a try. So he obediently followed Xiaochen into the restaurant. "Two guests, please come in. Are you here for a meal or to stay?" The boss behind the counter was a middle-aged woman, and she looked quite familiar. Seeing that there were customers, she immediately ordered the waiter to pour 2 cups of hot tea. "Hello, lady boss. It's our first time here and we're not familiar with the situation here. That's why we wanted to ask you about something." Xiaochen cupped his fists and bowed. "What is it? Ask away. I'll tell you if I know." The lady boss had good self-restraint. Seeing that Xiaochen and the others were not here to eat, she did not get angry. Instead, she spoke politely. Xiaochen nodded and asked with a smile, "I heard that this place uses something called spirit crystals as currency to buy things. However, we only have ordinary banknotes on us now, so I'd like to ask if we can use them to pay the bill." "Alright, you can also pay by card." In order to show that he didn't have any spirit crystals on him, Xiaochen took out a stack of money from the secular world and a bank card. However, he had also set up a bank card in the secular world. The lady boss took Xiaochen's money in surprise and carefully looked at it. She shook her head and looked at the bank card in Xiaochen's hand. She frowned and said, "You two are from out of town, right? I've never seen this kind of paper before. Also, this card looks different from our spirit crystal cards, so it shouldn't be useful." The lady boss returned the 100 banknotes to Xiaochen and sighed awkwardly, indicating that she couldn't help even if she wanted to. After thinking for a while, Xiaochen asked, "I see. Then may I ask what exactly is this spirit crystal?" As for the spirit crystal, the lady boss hesitated for a moment and carefully looked at Xiaochen and Hongzhu. She felt that the two of them were indeed outsiders. It just so happened that someone was paying with spirit crystals at this time. She took the spirit crystal and raised it in her hand, indicating to Xiaochen, "Look, this is spirit crystal. It's actually quite common." "What? Isn't this spirit jade?" Hongzhu exclaimed in a low voice as he stared at the spirit crystal in the lady boss's hand. He then lowered his head and dejectedly muttered, "If I knew that this place was the same as the inner martial world and could use spirit jade as currency, I would have brought some with me." Xiaochen took a closer look and realized that the so-called spirit crystal was indeed spirit jade. However, it looked more refined and pure, as if it had been carefully forged and polished. It was not quite the same as the ordinary spirit jade in the inner martial world. Instead, it was more similar to the high-grade spirit jade that had been refined in the Jia clan's heavenly jade mine. However, although Xiaochen had the backing of the Jia clan, a wealthy spirit jade clan, he had entered the cultivation world empty-handed this time. He didn't bring any spirit jade with him. Previously, Xiaochen had been busy preparing for the sacrificial ceremony and selecting people, so he hadn't considered the issue of what currency was used in the cultivation world. Otherwise, he might have brought a few pieces with him and wouldn't have come empty-handed. In the end, he couldn't do anything now. "Lady boss, did you leave a private room for this young master? Hurry up and serve the good wine and dishes. Today, this young master wants to entertain an important guest." Just as Xiaochen and Hongzhu were feeling gloomy, a young man suddenly shouted from behind them. His tone was quite high-pitched, so he should be a regular customer of this restaurant. Young Master Zhao, you've come." The lady boss immediately put on a smile and called out in a loud voice, "Everything has been prepared for you. Moreover, we know that you have an important guest today, so we specially arranged for the purple air from the east private room on the 2nd floor. Please come in, I'll have the waiter serve the dishes for you." The person who had come was obviously a rich man. Just from the lady boss tone and the name of the private room, one could tell that the cost would definitely not be low. Well done." Young Master Zhao nodded his head in satisfaction. He was just about to call for a black-robed old man and a few subordinates behind him to go up the stairs when he turned his head and discovered Hongzhu standing at the side. He immediately stopped in his tracks and stared blankly, unable to move for a long time. Young Master Zhao carefully sized up Hongzhu, and the more he looked, the more he felt his heart itch. He looked at that plump and perky chest, that not only was it exquisite and charming, but it was also extremely flirtatious. Every move she made was dazzling. Just that pair of fair and slender legs alone was enough for him to play with for a year. Young Master Zhao's saliva almost flowed out of his mouth. This girl was simply the best. How come he had never seen her before? Hong Zhu felt extremely uncomfortable under young Master Zhao's lecherous gaze and could not help but glare at him, angrily scolding, "What are you looking at? Have you never seen a beauty before? Believe it or not, I'll dig out your eyeballs and feed them to the dogs." Although Hong Zhu had cultivated the charm technique, she was still quite disgusted by this kind of swine who was like a housefly. If not for the fact that it was a mission, she would not have been willing to casually use the charm technique on other men. "Haha, you've got quite a hot temper, but this young master likes hot chili peppers like you." Young Master Zhao excitedly raised his eyebrows, approaching Hong Zhu and vigorously sniffing the fragrance on her body, an intoxicated expression on his face. Chapter 1322. Are you trying to be cheap? Scram back to where you came from. Big sister doesn't have time to play games with a yellow-haired brat like you. Hong Zhu immediately took a step back, putting some distance between her and young Master Zhao as she berated him with a look of disgust. Young Master Zhao didn't seem to mind Hong Zhu's disgust in the slightest. Still wearing a seductive expression, he said with a lewd smile, "Little girl, don't say that. Are you interested in having a meal with this young master? This young master promises that he won't treat you unfairly. My woman has no interest in having a meal with you. Go do what you need to do." Xiao Qin said coldly from the side before pulling Hong Zhu's hand and preparing to leave the restaurant. Although Xiao Qin wasn't too interested in Hong Zhu's usual teasing, she was still his friend after all. Naturally, Xiao Qin wouldn't just stand by and watch as she was bullied. This young Master Zhao also didn't seem to be a good person. Adhering to the principle that it was better to avoid trouble, Xiao Qin planned to directly leave the restaurant and toss this annoying fly to the back of his mind. "Wait!" Young Master Zhao shouted and waved his hand. His subordinates immediately surrounded Xiao Qin and Hong Zhu, blocking their path. "What do you mean?" Xiao Qin frowned and asked in a low voice. He was already in a bad mood. If this was the inner martial world or the secular world, he would have long since slapped this good-for-nothing young master who had appeared out of nowhere to death. If it weren't for the fact that he had just arrived in the cultivation world and was completely ignorant of the situation here, how could this guy have the chance to jump around? Without understanding the other party's background and strength, Xiao Qin naturally couldn't choose to act rashly. "Nothing much, I just wanted to tell you that you can get lost now. However, this little girl must stay and accompany this young master to have some fun." Although young Master Zhao's tone sounded light and indifferent, his lofty and indisputable attitude was completely revealed. In his opinion, Xiao Qin was nothing more than an unremarkable fellow. Being together with such a beautiful little girl was simply a reckless waste of God's gift. Instead of crippling him, he allowed him to leave on his own. This was already giving him a lot of face. "Do you think I'll stay just because you said so? What if I don't agree?" Xiao Qin's expression didn't change, but his heart was already angry. This kind of overbearing and despotic second-rate playboy actually dared to climb all over him? At this time, Xiao Qin already had the intention to kill. At worst, he could directly kill this fool and then use the flying sword to escape. Anyway, with the speed of the flying sword, these people should not be able to catch up in a short time. "Oh, you actually dare to challenge this young master?" Zhao Wending's face revealed an incredulous expression. He snorted coldly and said, "Originally, I didn't want to let you go, you stinking brat. But now, it seems that if I don't teach you a good lesson and teach you a lesson, you won't know how powerful I, Zhao Wending, am." After saying that, Zhao Wending immediately activated his Heart Sutra and revealed his cultivation. His cold eyes swept over Xiao Qin. His expression was as if he was looking at an ant that was about to be crushed to death by him. The lady boss had already hidden far away. Her face was full of worry as she looked over here. The customers who were originally eating in the restaurant also noticed the movement here. Many people put down their bowls and chopsticks, holding the mentality of watching a good show. Seeing Xiao Qin and Zhao Wending standing face to face, many people looked at Xiao Qin with a trace of pity in their eyes. But no one was willing to speak up for him. It could be seen that Zhao Wending did indeed have some power in this small town. Xiao Qin vigorously rubbed his eyes and looked at Zhao Wending in disbelief. He once thought that he had seen wrong or that there was a problem with his senses. But when he confirmed again, he found that Zhao Wending's cultivation was still the same as before. At this moment, Zhao Wending, who was standing in front of Xiao Qin, was actually emitting an aura of a cultivation of the 6th level of Qi refining stage. Xiao Qin blankly looked at Zhao Wending. Could it be that this guy had deliberately suppressed his strength in order to confuse me and make me have an illusion? But Xiao Qin carefully thought about it again. For a brainless hedonistic son of rich parents like Zhao Wendeng, and looking at the servants and bodyguards behind him, he reckoned that he had the backing of his family. Zhao Wendeng shouldn't be able to use a high-level method like attacking something with a feint. This sixth level of qi refining stage was most likely his true strength. This time Xiaoqin was really confused. Holy sh*t with just this little bit of strength, he dared to come out and act cool? If I casually rewarded him with a head, and it was the kind where I had to control my strength, this brat would probably have to lie at home and recuperate for half a year. What kind of joke is this? Is this really the world of cultivators? Or have I and Hongzhu been sent to some strange place? Could it be that I and Hongzhu have been sent to some strange place? Isn't this nonsense? At this time Hongzhu was also staring at Zhao Wendeng with a strange expression. Although she wasn't a true cultivator and couldn't see through Zhao Wendeng's strength, judging from his aura, this guy's strength didn't seem to be much higher than hers. Hey, do you know fear now? Seeing Xiaoqian's stupefied appearance, Zhao Wendeng thought that he had been scared silly by the strength he had displayed. He became even more insufferably arrogant as he said with a face full of arrogance, "If you kneel down right now, properly kowtow to this young master a few times, sincerely apologize, then leave behind the little girl beside you and quickly scram, then I'll forgive you for the time being." Without waiting for Zhao Wendeng to finish speaking, Xiaoqin yawned and impatiently interrupted him, "Spare my dog life for the time being, right? I'm already tired of hearing this kind of saying. Every time I meet some idiot who thinks he's in love, they always say the same thing. Do you have any other fresh words?" What did you say?" Zhao Wendeng's words were stuck in his throat. When he heard Xiaoqian actually say such words, he thought he had misheard and couldn't help but ask in astonishment. "I said that you're extremely cliché." Xiaoqian snorted disdainfully at Zhao Wendeng and said, "Moreover, your cultivation is so low, yet you still have the nerve to come out and make a fool of yourself? No wonder you have so many subordinates by your side, it's so that it's convenient for them to collect your corpse, right? Damn it, stinking brat, you still dare to be so stubborn? This young master will make you die without a burial place today." Zhao Wendeng was instantly enraged. His aura skyrocketed, and just as he was about to rush forward and kill Xiaoqian, he suddenly felt someone pat his shoulder. "Young Master Deng, such a small matter isn't worthy of you personally taking action. Let this old man do it for you." The black-robed elder who had been observing from the side patted Zhao Wendeng's shoulder and blocked his way, staring at Xiaoqian as he spoke in a deep voice. Chapter 1323. Xiaoqian guessed that the old man was probably young Master Deng's chief bodyguard or something. Now that things had gotten out of hand, he naturally couldn't just stand there and pretend not to see anything. However, he didn't know how strong this guy was. "Oh, all right then. Thank you, Senior Feng." Zhao Wendeng was slightly stunned. He hesitated for a moment before nodding his head in agreement. He was so impulsive just now that he almost forgot that he was bringing Senior Feng here for a meal. Senior Feng was a bodyguard that his father had specially hired with a lot of money. Therefore, Zhao Wendeng had planned to give him a welcoming dinner. He didn't expect to meet this exquisite girl before he even had a meal. Zhao Wendeng originally wanted to show off in front of the girl, but it turned out that Senior Feng was going to take action on his behalf. It seemed that his wish would be dashed. However, Zhao Wendeng changed his mind. It was actually quite good to let Senior Feng take action. This way, not only would it save him the trouble of doing it himself, but he could also use him to display the Zhao family's strength. Perhaps that girl would fall in love with him when she saw how strong his bodyguard was? The black-robed old man had a cold smile on his face. He took out a talisman from his pocket and gently pinched it between the fingertips of his left hand. Then he pushed his right hand forward. The talisman immediately stood up and was wrapped in crimson flames. Throughout the entire process, Xiaoqian stared at the old man's movements with great interest. It seemed that he was trying to figure out what was so awesome about the talisman. After the talisman started burning, the black-robed old man's body began to emit waves of pressure. He then narrowed his eyes at Xiaoqian and shouted, "Kid, show me your magic weapon. I never kill unarmed people. Looks like my luck is pretty good. I've really been sent to the newbie village." When Xiaoqian heard the old man's challenge, he shrugged in boredom and said casually. Although the black-robed old man in front of him looked very imposing, the cultivation that he revealed was only at the first level of the foundation establishment stage. He wasn't much stronger than that arrogant hedonistic young master. "What village? Stop wasting time over there, hurry up and give me." The black-robed old man thought that Xiaoqian was deliberately talking about something he didn't understand, so he immediately snorted coldly. However, before the black-robed old man could finish his words, Xiao Chen's figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of him. Xiao Chen then swung his arm and slapped him. He did not forget to add, "Since you are so eager to die, I will fulfill your wish." What? The black-robed old man only saw a figure flash in front of him. Before he could catch a glimpse of Xiao Chen's figure, he was slapped hard in the face. The cold smile on his face instantly froze. With a loud bang, the black-robed old man flew out of the restaurant and crashed into several thick walls nearby. He was directly covered in dust and disappeared without a trace. Xiao Chen swung his arm and curled his lips in boredom. Too weak. It's like killing a newbie in a beginner's village. There's no sense of accomplishment at all. So boring. You. Zhao Wendeng looked at the scene in front of him, dumbfounded. He was speechless for a while. Looking at the dumbfounded Zhao Wendeng, Xiao Chen scratched his head and asked, "Your name is Zhao? What's it again?" "Forget it, it doesn't matter. I will give you two choices now. First, leave your spiritual crystals and get lost with your subordinates. Second, if you have any objections, you can refer to the first one. Kid, tell me your name if you have the guts." Zhao Wendeng snapped back to reality and said through gritted teeth, "Do you think the Zhao family is so easy to mess with? Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you have some strength. Don't think that you can leave safely after killing the Zhao family. Let me tell you, I will settle this score with you sooner or later." Zhao Wendeng was very depressed at the moment. He thought that Senior Wind could win easily, but he didn't expect him to be sent flying with a single slap. Until now there was no sign of life at all. He was probably dead. Xiao Chen was about to speak when a group of people walked down slowly from the second floor. The young man in green who was leading the group had a toothpick in his mouth. He looked over with disdain and mocked, "Yo, isn't this our famous young master Zhao? Why, bringing a few lackeys out to show off again?" Qin Taotian. Looking at the newcomer, Zhao Wendeng gnashed his teeth in anger. The fact that Senior Wind had been sent flying had already made him feel aggrieved and displeased. Never had he thought that another fellow would pop up now to mess things up. "Thank you for letting me win. I didn't know that young Master Zhao was eating here. Otherwise I would definitely come over and offer a toast," the young man in green said eccentrically as he pinched his nose. Then he said with a surprised expression, "Oh right, if I'm not wrong, something seemed to have flown out just now, right? TSK, your Zhao family does have a lot of capable people. I'm really envious." Zhao Wendeng glared at him and warned coldly, "Qin Taotian, this has nothing to do with you. I'm warning you, don't King get involved, lest you find trouble for yourself." "Ah, how is it not my business?" The green-clothed man called Qin Taotian spat out the toothpick in his mouth and continued to mock him calmly. "Let me guess, you've taken a fancy to this young hero's female companion and want to bring her back to enjoy with your father, am I right?" "I've taken a fancy to her, it's none of your—" "What did you say?" Zhao Wendeng was about to retort when he suddenly choked and glared at Qin Taotian with a flushed face. When Qin Taotian saw Zhao Wendeng's attitude, he became even more proud of himself. He said slowly, "What I'm saying is, who doesn't know that the Zhao clan has two heroes? Both father and son love to do those despicable things, and they even like to play with each other. Like father, like son. F***ck your grandma's leg. What the F***ck are you talking about? I dare you to say it again." Zhao Wendeng was obviously hit in his soft spot. His expression turned even more terrible, and the veins on his forehead bulged crazily as he shouted loudly. However, because the black-robed old man was sent flying and the few servants behind him did not have high standards, Zhao Wendeng did not dare to make a move even though he was furious. He could only glare and clench his fists tightly as he endured it. The Zhao family has two heroes. Both father and son are despicable, and they like to play with each other. Like father like son indeed. Qin Taotian repeated it 3 times in a row. Then he looked at Zhao Wendeng with a smile and said, "I have to repeat the so-called important things 3 times. Do you understand now? Do you want me to repeat it a few more times for free?" Chapter 1324. Good. Zhao Wendeng was so angry that he already did not know how to retort. He said the word good 3 times in a row, glaring at Qin Taotian with eyes that were almost spitting fire. "Ah, you actually also understand the principle of saying important words 3 times. Looks like it's indeed because of my teaching, haha." Qin Taotian threw his head back and laughed loudly, seemingly feeling very pleased with himself for ruthlessly humiliating Zhao Wendeng. Although Zhao Wendeng was unable to restrain his anger, he also knew that now was not the time for him to show off his might. He hesitated for a moment but still did not give up, pointing at Qin Taotian and threatening, "Don't think that just because your Qin family has that little bit of power, you can behave atrociously in Yanlin town without the slightest scruple. Just you wait, I'll make you pay the price for today's words very soon. This little brother, looks like you and your friend haven't eaten yet, right? Do you want to do me the honor of sitting down and have a simple meal with me?" Qin Taotian did not seem to care about Zhao Wending's threat at all, as if he had already blocked out his voice. He turned and looked at Xiao Chen with a smile, inviting him. Seeing that he was directly ignored, Zhao Wendeng could not help but become even more furious. However, the situation at present was disadvantageous to him, so he could only endure it and wave his hand at his subordinates, saying, "Humph! Let's go." But before they had taken a few steps, Zhao Wendeng turned around again, pointing at Xiao Chen and threatening coldly, "Brat, don't think that you can sit back and relax just because the surname Qin is protecting you. If you have the guts, follow him for the rest of your lives. Otherwise, if I run into you again, humph humph. At that time, I'll let you die even more horribly than old Senior Feng." No matter how Zhao Wendeng hooted, Qin Taotian still turned a blind eye to him. With a kind smile on his face, he made an inviting gesture towards Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu, indicating for the two to go up to the second floor to chat. Xiao Chen also did not pay any attention to Zhao Wendeng. Although he still did not know what Qin Taotian's objective was after thinking about it, he still cupped his hands towards him, then led Hong Zhu up the stairs, chatting cheerfully and wittily on his own as he went up the stairs. "Qin Taotian, you'll regret your decision today. And that stinking brat, don't let me see you again." Zhao Wendeng had never been given the cold shoulder like this before. He immediately felt extremely embarrassed and cursed angrily at Qin Taotian and Xiao Chen's backs. Outside the hotel, more and more onlookers were attracted by Zhao Wendeng's scolding. Many of them had been bullied by Zhao Wendeng before. Now that they saw him cursing like a shrew on the street, but no one paid any attention to him like a jumping clown, they couldn't help but be secretly delighted. Zhao Wendeng cursed a few times. Seeing that there were more and more people around, he finally realized that something was wrong. He snorted heavily, turned around, and left. His few silent subordinates hurriedly followed behind him. The scene changed to the second floor. Under Qin Taotian's lead, they arrived at a private room on the second floor and took their seats. Then, Qin Taotian instructed the lady boss to bring up another table of good wine and dishes. In fact, Qin Taotian and the others had already eaten a meal. This table had been specially prepared to entertain Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu, making them appear rather generous. "It is truly an honor to meet the two of you. I am Qin Taotian of Swallow Forest Town's Qin family." After everyone took their seats, Qin Taotian first introduced himself, then opened his mouth and asked with a chuckle, "Young heroes, looking at your travel-worn appearances, it must be your first time coming to Swallow Forest Town, right? May I know the reason for your visit this time? Is it convenient for you to introduce yourselves first?" Xiao Chen cupped his fists and said, "Hello, brother Qin. I am called Xiao Chong. The person beside me is a junior sister from the same sect. Her surname is Hong and she is also my wife. The two of us have come here this time mainly to search for our lost senior and junior brothers." Although Qin Taotian had helped him out of trouble, Xiao Chen did not speak the truth because he was still unclear of his character and background. Moreover, he had specially used an alias when mentioning the two of them. Hearing Xiao Chen refer to her as his wife, Hong Zhu could not help but blush slightly. She was a little excited in her heart. Although she understood that Xiao Chen was only saying this to prevent her from being coveted, who knew if it might turn out to be true as he spoke. Looks like she had to grasp this opportunity well. "Little brother Xiao Chen, let's see if you can escape from elder sister's palm this time." In order to conceal her little thoughts, Hong Zhu opened her mouth and asked, "May I ask brother Qin, just who is that young Master Zhao just now? Why is he so overbearing?" "For her, you guys are indeed from out of town. You don't even know Zhao Wendeng." "Actually Qin Taotian smiled faintly. He was just about to continue speaking when he heard someone knock on the door. Then a waiter came in with wine and dishes. Qin Taotian paused. After everything was arranged, the waiter withdrew, closed the door and then continued, "That Zhao Wendeng is the third-generation successor of Swallow Forest Town's largest family, the Zhao family. He was raised in the palm of his hand, and is normally insufferably arrogant. He often bullies men and tyrannizes women in the town. Many people find him an eyesore but they can't do anything to him." Xiao Chen nodded in realization. Holding his chin thoughtfully, he probed, "So that's how it is. Looks like this Zhao family has a very deep background. Also, I reckon that there should be quite a few experts in their family. Otherwise, Zhao Wendeng, that brat, wouldn't be so reckless outside and no one can control him." And Brother Xiao is right. Qin Taodan nodded in agreement, and then added with a face full of indignation, "Not only does their Zhao family have experts as many as trees in a forest, I heard that an Aurus core stage consecrator came a while ago. This time, the Zhao family is even more lawless in Swallow Forest Town. They don't put other families in their eyes at all." When mentioning the Zhao family's consecrator, Qin Taoyan's eyes still revealed a trace of reverence. His voice also unconsciously became a little softer. "Oh, Aurus core stage." Xiao Chen had a non-committal look on his face. It was just a Aurus core stage. Was it that awesome? If it was Xiao Chen who had just entered the Qi refinement stage, he might feel that this strength was as high as a mountain and could not be defeated. However, he was now at the peak of the 6th level of the profound ascension stage. A mere Aurus core stage, he didn't even feel the slightest bit of emotion. Hong Zhu, on the other hand, frowned slightly. Her concept of cultivators was still stuck at the level of the inner martial arts world. She only knew the difference between Demon General, Demon King, and Demon Venerable. As for what level of cultivation the Aurus core stage was, and how strong it was, she was also confused. She couldn't figure it out at all. Seeing that Xiao Chen didn't have any emotion, Qin Taotian thought that he was afraid in his heart but wanted to hold on. So he patted his shoulder with a face full of righteousness and said, "Brother Xiao, don't be too nervous. As long as I, Qin Taodan, am here, I think the Zhao family won't dare to easily find trouble with you." Chapter 1325. Then I'll thank Brother Qin's good intentions first. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and didn't refuse right away. Instead he asked, "I presume your Qin family also has considerable strength in Yanlin town, right? Otherwise, Zhao Wendeng wouldn't have left the matter unsettled just because of a few words from you." Now that he knew the Zhao family only had one golden core expert holding the fort, Xiao Chen didn't care about that family anymore. He also wanted to find out how much weight the Qin family had. "It's all right. Although our Qin family doesn't have the Zhao family's impressive tributes, even if we were to go up against the Zhao family, we wouldn't be afraid at all." Qin Taotian patted his chest confidently and said, "Because my grandfather is already a Foundation Establishment Great Circle expert, and there are faint signs of a breakthrough recently. If he can successfully advance, then our Qin family will replace the Zhao family sooner or later and become the #1 family in Yanlin town." "That's really not bad." Hearing Qin Taoyan's words, Xiao Chen only smiled and answered casually. He didn't make any statement. In Xiao Chen's eyes, it didn't matter to him whether the Qin family or the Zhao family could become the #1 family in Yanlin town. Moreover, Xiao Chen could also faintly feel that Qin Taoyan's purpose of treating him to a meal wasn't that simple. Therefore he only responded casually with a few sentences and cautiously didn't make any biased judgments. However, Qin Taotian didn't pay attention to Xiao Chen's attitude. Instead, he said to him earnestly, "However, Brother Xiao, I still have to give you a piece of advice. After you find your lost seniors and juniors, it's better to leave Yanlin town as soon as possible. After all, I can protect you for a while, but I can't protect you forever." I understand what you mean. I'll consider it." Xiao Chen smiled faintly and nodded. He didn't say anything more. After sweeping away all the dishes on the table and filling their stomachs, Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu stood up and said their goodbyes, preparing to set off in search of the others. As for the kindness of this meal, Xiao Chen had no way of repaying Qin Taotian at the moment. He could only wait until he had earned enough spirit crystals in the future, then think of a way to repay Qin Taotian. A group of people clustered around each other as they walked to the restaurant's entrance. After both parties bid farewell to each other, Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu turned around and left. Qin Taotian thought for a moment before he suddenly shouted, "Brother Xiao, please wait, I still have something to say." Xiao Chen stopped and turned around, asking in astonishment, "Brother Qin, do you have anything else to tell me?" Qin Taotian walked a few steps to the front of Xiao Chen and explained, "Brother Xiao, Zhao Wendeng is a person who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance, so I reckon that he will bring a mid-level Foundation Establishment expert to cause trouble for you. If you don't mind, why don't you come to stay with us for a few days? I can borrow the Qin family's connections to help you search for your lost senior and junior brothers. What do you think?" The scene of Xiao Chen killing the opponent's first-level foundation establishment expert with a single palm strike just so happened to be witnessed by Qin Taotian. He felt that Xiao Chen should be quite powerful, and it was precisely because of this that Qin Taotian had specially stepped forward to help Xiao Chen out of his predicament. While they were eating, Qin Taotian had tried to probe Xiao Chen with a few words. Unfortunately, he was unable to find out Xiao Chen's true cultivation level. However, based on the power of Xiao Chen's palm strike, Qin Taotian estimated that he should at least be at the third or fourth level of the foundation establishment stage. Thus, when they were descending the stairs, a plan suddenly appeared in Qin Taotian's mind. This was why he had rashly asked Xiao Chen and Hongzhu to stay. Many thanks for Brother Qin's good intentions. Since the Zhao family is so eager to court death, then let them be. I have my own ways to deal with them. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Xiao Chen did not accept Qin Taotian's invitation. Instead, he directly shook his head and rejected it. Then he turned around and left the restaurant with Hongzhu. At present, Xiao Chen was in a hurry to find the whereabouts of Cheng Menjing and the other women. How could he have the time to get entangled with the Zhao family and the Qin family? As for the so-called Zhao family experts, he did not place them in his eyes at all. Furthermore, when Qin Taotian had mentioned searching together, Xiao Chen did not believe that a family in such a small town could have many connections that would be sufficient to help him find a place that even his divine sense could not cover. Qin Taotian had completely believed that Xiao Chen would agree immediately. He never imagined that this fellow would actually choose to reject his invitation. He was immediately stunned on the spot. However, he did not become angry because of this. Instead, he rubbed his chin and looked meaningfully at the backs of Xiao Chen and Hongzhu as they left. Just now, when he mentioned the mid-level foundation establishment experts, this Xiao Chang seemed to have a very disdainful expression. He seemed to be quite powerful. Could it be that his cultivation was higher than the foundation establishment stage? Young master, this Xiao fellow is actually so untactful. We invited him to a meal out of goodwill and even invited him back as a guest, but he still acted so arrogantly. Shouldn't we find a chance to teach him a lesson? That would also make him more cautious. When the middle-aged man behind Qin Taotian saw that he did not speak for a long time, he thought that Qin Taotian had been angered silly and suggested, "Are you crazy? This Xiao Chang's strength might even be above yours and mine. Besides, I still need to use him to attack the Zhao family. How can we become enemies with him over such a small matter? Is there something wrong with your brain?" Qin Taotian regained his senses and glared at him as he scolded. I was just speaking thoughtlessly. Please be magnanimous and don't take offense. Then what do you think we should do next? The middle-aged man jumped in fright and hurriedly said with a smile. Qin Taotian pondered for a moment and immediately made a decision. With a wave of his hand he said, "Let's follow them and take a look. When the time comes, we'll act according to the situation." After making his decision, Qin Taotian ordered his subordinates to pay for the meal. Then he led a group of people and followed behind Xiao Chen and Hongzhu from afar. From Qin Taotian's point of view, Xiao Chen's strength should not be weak. If he could fight with the Zhao family and kill a few of them, he would exhaust some of the other party's middle-level strength. Then the pressure on the Qin family would be greatly reduced. After all, the Qin family was only slightly weaker than the Zhao family. However, it was precisely this slight difference that caused the Qin family to be restrained in many areas by the Zhao family. They were unable to continue expanding and could only stay in the Zhao family's shadow to survive. If Xiao Chen could make a move and weaken the Zhao family's strength, wouldn't that mean that there was hope for their Qin family? Xiao Chen brought Hongzhu to stroll around Yanlin town for a while. As they walked, he used his divine sense to search carefully. However, he still could not find any traces of Cheng Menjing and the other women. Hongzhu even specially found a few stalls and asked if they had seen any strangers entering or leaving. The answers were all negative. It seemed that they had not appeared here at all. Helpless, Xiao Chen and Hongzhu could only decide to leave Yanlin town and search other places. Chapter 1326. Qin Taotian's group, who were following behind Xiao Chen, was at a loss when they saw Xiao Chen and Hongzhu walking towards the outskirts. Qin Taotian pondered for a moment, then instructed his subordinates to report back to the Qin family. Then he and the middle-aged man continued to follow Xiao Chen from afar. Qin Taotian had his own calculations. If Xiao Chang and the Zhao family clashed in the outskirts, then they would definitely unleash their full strength and fight. At this time, two situations would occur. One was that Xiao Chang was indeed, as he had said, very strong and had exhausted most of the other party's energy. Then when the time came he could step forward and harvest the remaining shrimp soldiers and crab generals, reaping the benefits when the sandpiper and clam fight. On the other hand, if Xiao Chen was defeated, then he would observe exactly what level he was at. Then he would consider whether he should help him and block the Zhao clan's attack, doing this guy a favor and saving his life. At the same time he could rope him in for his own use. Very quickly Xiao Chen and Hongzhu left Swallow Forest Town, heading towards the outskirts. After walking for a short distance, Hongzhu suddenly thought of something and asked, "Right, little brother Xiao Chen, I felt that black-robed old man seemed to be quite powerful. His cultivation was quite a bit higher than mine, but in the end he was actually sent flying by a single palm strike from you. What level are you at now?" "Well, with your current level of knowledge, it will be very difficult for me to explain it to you in a short time." For a moment Xiao Chen did not know how to explain the division of cultivators to Hongzhu, so he could only give a vague answer. "What's so hard to explain? If you can't explain it in a short time, then you'll have to spend more time." Hongzhu coquettishly rolled her eyes at Xiao Chen and teased, "In any case, the two of us will be staying together for a very long time. We need to find something to do so we won't feel bored, don't you think so? In short, you just need to understand one thing, and that is that I am much more awesome than that Yanlin Town's clan." Xiao Chen rubbed his nose and gave a simple answer. It was not that Xiao Chen did not have the patience to explain things to Hongzhu, it was just that his spiritual sense had already sensed that there were two groups of people following him, so he did not want to waste any more time on this matter. Of the two groups, one was Qin Taotian and a middle-aged man. They seemed to have eaten together earlier. The other group only had one person. However, that person's cultivation was clearly higher. That was because Qin Taotian and the others did not notice that person's existence. Originally, when Xiao Chen left Swallow Forest Town, he planned on using flying swords instead of walking. However, when he considered that there were still people following behind him, he also restrained this thought, thinking that he should first keep a low profile for a while, so as to avoid letting others see through his cultivation. Besides, after coming to the immortal cultivation world, Xiao Chen had not seen anyone flying on a flying sword. He did not intend to recklessly take risks just for the sake of transportation, so it was better not to expose himself for the time being. TCH acting all mysterious. We've already seen each other naked, so what's there to hide? Hongzhu thought that Xiao Chen was deliberately refusing to tell her and pursed her lips in dissatisfaction. "Oh, that's a job requirement, there's no helping it." Xiao Chen's forehead was filled with black lines. This Hongzhu was really too unrestrained. What kind of girl would casually mention this matter? Carefully sensing the distance of the people following behind him, Xiao Chen gradually quickened his pace, walking deeper and deeper into the plains, getting further and further away from Swallow Forest Town. "TCH, what job requirement? Why do I feel like you seem to be enjoying it?" Hongzhu chuckled, then changed the topic and asked, "Also, what's the deal with those Foundation Establishment and Golden Core cultivators? You seem to understand the division of ranks in the immortal cultivation world very well. Little brother Xiao Chen, why are you suddenly walking so fast? It's not like I'm going to eat you." "We're being followed. Let's not chat for now. I'll find a chance to tell you what you asked." Xiao Chen continued to quicken his pace, wanting to shake off the two groups of people behind him. After all, the less trouble the better. He also could not be bothered to get tangled up with these two weak chicken clans. "It can't be? Why don't I see anyone behind me?" Hongzhu was startled when he heard this. He subconsciously turned his head to look behind him, but did not discover the slightest thing. After looking around for a while, not hearing Xiao Chen's reply, Hongzhu turned his head back to look, but discovered that Xiao Chen had already walked several zhang away. He could not help but stomp his feet in anger, scolding in a tender voice, "Damn Xiao Chen, stinky Xiao Chen, you little scoundrel, can't you wait for me? Is there money in front waiting for you to pick up or what?" Really infuriating. Scolding was scolding, but Hongzhu still quickened his pace to catch up. If he got separated from Xiao Chen, then he would be in big trouble. The two groups of people following far behind Xiao Chen were also extremely depressed at this moment. Originally, when they had just left Swallow Forest Town, they could still keep up with Xiao Chen's speed, but as they got further and further away from Swallow Forest Town, they did not know what was going on, but the distance between them grew larger and larger. If it were not for the fact that the little girl was walking rather slowly, they would have basically lost track of him by now. Qin Taotian was leading his subordinates to chase after Xiao Chen with all his might. Suddenly he heard a so sound. A red silhouette suddenly flashed past the bushes beside him, heading towards Xiao Chen's direction as fast as lightning. F***CK. What's going on? Qin Taotian immediately jumped in fright, clutching his chest with lingering fear as he watched the red figure gradually disappear from his line of sight. Just now, Qin Taotian had not sensed the existence of that person at all. At this moment he could not help but secretly rejoice in his heart. Fortunately that fellow had not come for him, otherwise he might have already died by now. Eldest young master, that person should be an expert sent by the Zhao family. Based on his speed just now, I reckon that his cultivation is already at the great circle of the foundation establishment stage. It seems that Xiao Chang will have to suffer this time. The middle-aged man squinted his eyes as he looked into the distance, making a cautious judgment. Just now, when the red figure flashed by, he had already sensed the other party's strength. However, since that person did not attack Qin Taotian, he did not make any moves to stop him and instead allowed him to leave. Oh, I don't think so. I've always felt that the brat Xiao Chang is a little strange. Furthermore, from his and that girl's attire, they don't seem to be people from our Swallow Forest town. Perhaps. F***CK, where is he? While he was analyzing, Qin Taotian raised his head and discovered that Xiao Chang had practically disappeared without a trace. Hurry up, let's quickly chase after him. Without waiting for the middle-aged man to reply, Qin Taotian hurriedly waved his hand. While urging his movement technique to quickly chase after Xiao Chang, he also added, "Look how fast that brat is running. What I said just now is not important, we just need to quickly catch up and see how he deals with that fellow. Then we will know exactly what kind of background he has." Chapter 1327. In fact, Xiao Chen's walking speed was not very fast. He was just moving forward at a normal pace, but because of his strength at the peak of the 6th level of the profound ascension stage, every step he took was equivalent to several steps of a low-level cultivator, sometimes even dozens of steps. Therefore, the distance between him and his pursuers was gradually widening. As he walked, Xiao Chen suddenly felt that his surroundings had become a little quiet. Looking back, he found that Hong Zhu was chasing after him with puffed cheeks and panting heavily, but she was unwilling to call out to him. Xiao Chen could not help but shake his head and smile. He stopped and waited for Hong Zhu to catch up to him. Reaching out, he directly picked her up and continued to walk at the same pace as before. "Humph. At least you still have a little conscience." Hong Zhu pouted and knocked on Xiao Chen's chest as he habitually began to tease him. "Little brother Xiao Chen, since you like to walk so much, you might as well become my mount. In the future if big sister goes out, how about I ride you?" Being held in Xiao Chen's arms and smelling Xiao Chen's strong arms and masculine scent, Hong Zhu's heart palpitated. The unhappiness of being left behind by Xiao Chen gradually faded away, and what followed was an inexplicable sense of excitement. "Ride me, as a means of transportation." Hearing Hong Zhu's slightly ambiguous words, Xiao Chen almost choked. His body subconsciously trembled, not knowing how to answer, so he simply pretended that he did not hear it and picked up Hong Zhu as he quickened his pace. "Little brother Xiao Chen, are we still being followed? Do you know who it is?" Seeing that his teasing had failed, Hong Zhu also put away his playful thoughts and asked in a low voice with a slightly solemn expression. Looking behind them through the crook of Xiao Chen's arm, Hong Zhu found that there was indeed a red object faintly discernible in the grass behind them, but because it was too far away, he could not clearly see what it was. "Yes, there are a total of 2 groups of people following us. One of them should be Qin Taotian and his subordinates, but I've already shaken them off. The other group only has 1 person. It's a man in red. I reckon he's sent by the Zhao clan to seek revenge," Xiao Chen analyzed logically. Actually, this analysis was also very simple. Because after coming to the cultivation world, he only had conflicts with Zhao Wendeng. Plus, the ones with some strength in Swallow Forest Town were the Zhao family and Qin family, so as long as there weren't any special circumstances, there was only this possibility. "Little brother Xiao Chen, actually, I've always had a question." Hong Zhu paused for a moment, then asked with a strange look on his face, "Why do I feel like I can't see through you anymore? Ever since we left Swallow Forest Town, I've always been following behind you. I remember very clearly that you didn't even turn around to give us a glance. How did you know that the ones following us were Qin Taotian and a red-clothed man? Could it be that you have some kind of superpower?" "Oh, I didn't know at first either. It's just that when I turned around to carry you just now, I accidentally saw them." Xiao Chen's expression did not change as he casually made up a story. "Really? But I also turned around to look just now, why didn't I see anything?" Hongzhu naturally did not believe Xiao Chen's nonsense, and blurted out a question in reply. Hongzhu had a faint feeling that Xiao Chen seemed to be inextricably linked with this cultivation world, but he could not make heads or tails of it for a moment. He also did not know where this feeling of his came from. Maybe it's because both of my eyes have 0 points of vision so I can see more clearly. As Xiao Chen spoke without thinking, he silently calculated the distance between himself and the red-clothed man in his heart. After walking a few more steps, Xiao Chen felt that it was about time. Soon after, he leaped up and quickly dodged into the underbrush at the side. "This I don't believe." Hongzhu curled his lips and was just about to open his mouth to refute when he felt a blade of grass gently brushing past his cheek. Just as he cried out in alarm, his body was immediately covered by the underbrush. After hiding in the underbrush, Xiao Chen still tightly hugged Hongzhu in his arms, and then casually arranged a camouflage spell. Since he did not know whether the red-clothed man had other helpers or not, Xiao Chen decided to observe for a while before making his move for the sake of caution. Little brother Xiao Chen, don't tell me you're thinking of taking advantage of the fact that Menjing and Tang Tang aren't here to push this big sister down?" Hongzhu came back to her senses and found Xiao Chen's posture. She could not help but smile coquettishly and whispered in his ear with a sexy and charming voice, "Moreover, you actually chose to do it in the wild. I didn't expect that although you look so obedient and well-behaved, you're actually quite interesting." "Shoo, don't talk, that man is coming." Xiao Chen frowned slightly and pressed his index finger against Hongzhu's soft and moist lips, wanting to stop her from talking. However, as soon as he pressed his finger, Xiao Chen immediately felt his fingertips slip, and his entire finger was suddenly wrapped by something warm, as if something nimble was constantly teasing his index finger. Xiao Chen could not help but shiver. When he looked down, he found that Hongzhu had his index finger in her mouth, and was even slowly licking his fingertip with her tongue. The way she looked at Xiao Chen was exuding a strong sense of seduction, and the tips of her eyebrows and the corners of her eyes were filled with endless amorous feelings. Her finger was also gently caressing Xiao Chen's pectoral muscles and biceps. Xiao Chen was really helpless against this little demoness Hongzhu. What kind of situation was this? And yet she still had the mood to tease him. Glaring at Hongzhu in annoyance, Xiao Chen was about to withdraw his finger, when he suddenly heard the sound of hurried footsteps approaching from afar. Xiao Chen craned his neck to look, and to his surprise, the person running towards him was the man in red who had been following closely behind him. What the hell? Where did that brat run off to with that girl? Don't tell me that he suddenly got excited and hid in the woods to have some wild sex? The man in red searched the surrounding area for a long time, but did not find Xiao Chen and Hongzhu, who were very close to him. He could not help but angrily curse. "I clearly saw them burrow into the bushes, so why can't I even see their shadows now? Could it be that I, your father, was mistaken?" Xiao Chen quietly waited for a while, and after confirming that there were no signs of anyone else besides Qin Taoyan's group behind the man in red, he felt relieved. He immediately cancelled the camouflage, stood up with Hongzhu in his arms and sneered, "Hey! What are you looking for? This young master is right here. I didn't think that you would actually be blind despite having such a large pair of eyes." "Who's there?" The man in red with very large eyes was so frightened by the sudden voice that he stumbled back a few steps. After that, he came to his senses and immediately turned around. He stared with his large eyes, and discovered that Xiao Chen was leisurely standing there with Hongzhu in his arms, and was looking at him with a faint smile on his face. Chapter 1328. Upon seeing this, the man in red subconsciously lowered his head to look at where Xiao Chen was hiding, but he did not see any hole in the ground. Moreover, he remembered that he had specifically inspected that area just now, and there was nothing special about it other than the lush underbrush. How could he not have discovered them? Shaking his head, the man in red cast aside his doubts and glared at Xiao Chen, shouting, "Brat, you're finally willing to show yourself. I've been looking for you for a long time. Hurry up and tell me, where were you hiding with that girl just now? Why are you asking so many questions? Do you have something on or not? If you don't, then hurry up and get lost. Don't get in the way of our lovey-dovey. A single dog will be struck by lightning," Xiao Chen said lazily. He even waved his hand impatiently as if he was dismissing a beggar. Since the other party was alone, there was nothing for him to worry about. Hongzhu secretly pursed her lips and smiled. Very cooperatively, she leaned her head on Xiao Chen's shoulder, then rolled her eyes at the man in red. Pursing her lips, she protested angrily, That's right, They're in the middle of a lovey-dovey moment. Why is a big-eyed monster like you suddenly stirring up trouble? You're ruining the atmosphere. Hehe, you've offended the eldest young master of the Zhao family. Do you think you can get away so easily? The man in red sneered. His gaze swept across Xiao Chen's face, then landed on Hongzhu. He immediately could not take his eyes off her. What are you looking at? Do you believe that this eldest young master will dig your eyeballs out and throw them into the river? Xiao Chen frowned and shouted in a deep voice. He was very displeased with the man in red's lecherous gaze. The man in red turned a deaf ear to Xiao Chen's rebuke. At this moment, his large eyes were filled with passion and lust as they swept across Hongzhu's breasts and perky buttocks. Then, his eyes lingered on the curves of her exquisite waist as his breathing quickened. Tsk, she really is an exquisite girl. No wonder young Master Zhao is so infatuated with her and even caused old Thing Feng to lose his life. The red-clothed man swallowed a mouthful of saliva and sighed with a vulgar expression. Xiao Chen's complexion had already sunk. He gently placed Hongzhu on the ground, then moved in front of her in a flash, blocking the red-clothed man's sight. He said with a sullen face, "You really were sent by that little bastard of the Zhao family. If I had known earlier, I would have killed him back then. I wouldn't have caused so much trouble now." Seeing Hongzhu being admired by someone else, Xiao Chen felt an extremely uncomfortable feeling in his heart. However, he defined this feeling as the anger of seeing his friend being bullied, and did not have any other thoughts. Ah, stinking brat, it's too late for you to regret it now. The red-clothed man withdrew his gaze and threw his head back to the sky with a long laugh. Then he revealed a sinister expression and stared at Xiao Chen. He said coldly, "No one who provokes our Zhao family will be able to leave Yanlin town alive. You are no exception." As soon as he finished speaking, the red-clothed man pulled out a black wooden club from behind him. Then, his body trembled slightly and he revealed the cultivation of the great circle of the Foundation establishment stage. A wave of vitality instantly enveloped his entire body. Sigh, it seems like this Zhao family is only SOSO. This young master had thought that he could find someone more powerful to fight with. In the end, he only had a mere great circle of the Foundation establishment stage. He's simply looking down on this young master too much. I want to express my solemn protest. Xiao Chen yawned and shook his head with extreme dissatisfaction. What Xiao Chen said was not an exaggeration. Against this kind of low-level cultivator, he really did not have much interest in fighting. This was because, to him, they were basically just a move, and it was purely a waste of energy. However, after 2 fights, Xiao Chen noticed something different. The people in the immortal cultivation world seemed to have to rely on all kinds of weapons when they fought, such as talismans or rods. They were different from the pugilistic world and the secular world, where they basically only needed to rely on their fists and legs to solve their problems. Xiao Chen suddenly thought of Wang Fantian. That guy was not considered a cultivator, but he had extraordinary strength. Therefore he could casually pick up all kinds of strange heavy objects and use them as weapons, using them to make up for his lack of strength. Stinking brat, I didn't expect you to be so stubborn. However, it's alright. While you still have time, you can say a few more words. Otherwise, you won't have the chance later. The man in red did not take Xiao Chen's words to heart. He sneered and covered the entire black wooden club with yuan qi. Then he forcefully waved it, and a tree that was so thick that it would take 2 people to wrap their arms around it fell to the ground with a loud bang. Hongzhu, who was hiding behind Xiao Chen, could not help but jump in fright when he saw this. He thought that this person was much more powerful than the old man from before. Would Xiao Chen be able to deal with him? Wow, you're so powerful. Xiao Chen looked at the tree on the ground and clapped his hands a few times in amazement. He loudly exclaimed, I really couldn't tell that you were a woodcutter. The Zhao family is really full of talents. Ignorant child, have you never seen a person with divine strength like mine? After being ridiculed by Xiao Chen, the man in red's face turned green. He was about to reveal his strength in an extremely displeased manner, but he was interrupted halfway through his sentence. Do you know why I lured you here? Xiao Chen did not want to waste any more words with him and asked straightforwardly. The man in red was momentarily stunned when he heard this. I clearly did not expose myself earlier, so how did this kid sense it? He narrowed his eyes and asked cautiously, So, you know that I'm following you? Of course I know. Otherwise, why would I deliberately stop and wait for you? I've long since left you in the dust. Xiao Chen shrugged innocently, the corners of his lips curling into a thought-provoking smile. Don't talk nonsense. I clearly saw you take that girl and hide in the bushes. Don't tell me that you're not going to have some wild sex? The man in red felt that Xiao Chen was boasting and could not help but ask suspiciously. Oh, that's not it. I was going to hit you. As soon as Xiao Chen's voice fell, he did not wait for the man in red to react. He immediately rushed forward and threw a punch at the man's chest. Shameless bastard. You actually sneak attacked. The man in red turned pale with fright. However, he was still somewhat quick-witted. Before Xiao Chen's fist arrived, he quickly took a step back and used the black wooden stick in front of his chest to block the attack. Xiao Chen had already guessed that the man in red would do this. However, he directly ignored the wooden stick and smashed his fist down. Gotcha. With a muffled sound, the black wooden stick was instantly smashed into pieces. Xiao Chen's fist did not slow down and landed heavily on the man in red's chest. Chapter 1329. Ah. The man in red let out a blood-curdling scream. His ribs had been dented by Xiao Chen's fist, directly piercing through his heart. His entire body flew backwards, crushing a few large trees before landing on the ground. He spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, his eyes were wide open and he stopped breathing. He looked as though he had died with a grievance. At the same time, Qin Taotian finally arrived nearby with his subordinates, panting heavily. He just happened to see Xiao Chen send the man in red flying with a single punch, and the man fell dead on the spot. He immediately stopped in his tracks, turned around, and hid behind a large tree not far away, completely not daring to show himself. At this moment, Qin Taotian's expression was completely dumbfounded. In his heart, he was roaring crazily, "How is this possible?" That was an expert at the peak of the foundation establishment stage. He was actually killed by a single punch from that fellow. How is this possible? Could it be that I saw wrongly? Taking a deep breath, Qin Taotian sneakily peeked his head out from behind the tree and glanced at the man in red lying on the ground. He discovered that there was a large hole in the man's chest, and there was blood continuously flowing out of it. It looked extremely terrifying. Feeling a gust of cold wind blow past, Qin Taotian couldn't help but shiver. He thought to himself, how strong is this Xiao Chang? Even someone at the peak of the foundation establishment stage can be easily killed by him without a single scratch. One must know that even the strongest person in the family, grandfather, is only at the peak of the foundation establishment stage. Looks like Xiao Chang is even stronger than grandfather. Could it be that he is already an expert of the golden core stage? The middle-aged man beside Qin Taotian was also extremely shocked. He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead, and his face was filled with disbelief. Secretly looking at the motionless Xiao Chen in the distance, the middle-aged man thought back. When he was Xiao Chen's age, he probably hadn't even reached the foundation establishment stage, and was only at the qi refining stage. Could this rising star be a disciple of some hidden sect or high-class family in the immortal cultivation world? The two of you over there, stop hiding. You followed me for a while, right? Why aren't you showing yourselves? Xiao Chen turned his head to look in Qin Taotian's direction as he spoke indifferently. His voice was just loud enough for Qin Taotian and Xiao Chen to hear. The reason why Xiao Chen did not deal with Qin Taotian and his subordinates was because he felt that Qin Taotian had a decent character. Although he suspected that Qin Taotian was using him, he did not have any bad intentions. At the very least, he had treated Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu to a meal. Hearing Xiao Chen's voice, Qin Taotian was slightly startled. He exchanged glances with the middle-aged man and no longer dared to hide. He hurriedly walked out of the thicket and said with a smile, that, Lord Immortal, we don't know how powerful you are, so we thought of following you to take a look. If we have offended you in any way, please forgive us, ha. Although he had never seen a golden core stage expert, Qin Taotian had heard his grandfather mention that many top-notch experts had very strange tempers. They especially did not like to be followed. Therefore he was very regretful at this moment. If Xiao Chang took revenge on the Qin family because of this matter, then the entire family would definitely be burned to the ground in an instant. It was all his fault for playing petty tricks. He thought that he could hide in the back and wait to reap the benefits. He did not expect that he had made a huge mistake this time. Oh, since you have seen how powerful I am now, there shouldn't be any other problems, right? Then I'm leaving, bye-bye. Xiao Chen shook his head, feeling angry and amused at the same time. He turned around and left with Hong Zhu. He did not expect the people in the immortal cultivation world to be like the Shishan giant bull. As long as they saw someone more powerful than them, they would call them immortal. Did they really treat them as gods? Qin Taotian was dumbfounded again. What was up with this immortal Xiao? He did not seem angry? Could it be that he would not attack his own family? But, immortal Xiao, please wait. While Qin Taotian was still in a daze, Xiao Chen had already walked several meters away with Hong Zhu. He hurriedly shouted and chased after them with large strides. Then he bowed respectfully and said, "If exalted immortal Xiao doesn't mind, would it be possible for you to come to our Qin clan and stay for a few days?" "Why do I have to stay at your house? Give me a reason first." Xiao Chen's heart stirred. He stopped in his tracks and looked at Qin Taotian with a smile as he asked. Right now he was penniless. The money of the secular world was also not usable here. Since Qin Taotian was in a hurry to curry favor with him, why not? Although their family was very small and weak, he was in the dark in the immortal cultivation world. In a situation where he had no clue what to do, he needed someone to answer his questions. At the same time he could also sell Qin Taotian a favor. Who knows, he might even be moved to tears. "Just now, I took the liberty to follow immortal Xiao. I feel very apologetic and would like to express my apologies." Qin Taotian hurriedly explained. "Also, I believe that my grandfather would be very happy to invite a top expert like you to his house as a guest." Xiao Chen glanced at the red-clothed man's corpse not far away. He rolled his eyes and asked with a smile, "But I just killed someone from the Zhao clan. They'll definitely come looking for me for revenge. Aren't you, or your clan, afraid of being implicated by me?" "No. What's there to be afraid of?" Qin Taotian immediately patted his chest and said energetically, "Our Qin family is not to be trifled with. Also, immortal Xiao, you just killed a foundation establishment expert from the Zhao family. I think they will need a long time to recover. They definitely won't dare to cause trouble for us." Although that was what he said, Qin Taotian thought in his heart, so what if the Zhao family comes? As long as you are in the Qin family, they will be seeking death if they come. Really? I don't think it's that simple. Xiao Chen saw through Qin Taotian's thoughts at a glance. He smiled faintly and said teasingly, "You dare to make such a guarantee because I'm here. That's why they won't dare to come, right?" I really can't hide it from immortal Xiao Chen's eyes. I wonder what you think." Qin Taotian scratched his head awkwardly and smiled sheepishly as his thoughts were exposed. "Alright, since there's nothing else to do, I'll go back with you to take a look." Xiao Chen pretended to be deep in thought for a while before nodding. Other than wanting to understand the situation of the entire world of cultivation, Xiao Chen also wanted to use the Qin family to find the whereabouts of Cheng Menjing and the other women. Although the Qin family was small, there might be some information channels that he did not have. Instead of searching blindly in the world of cultivation, it was better to find a local helper first. That would save a lot of trouble. "That's great. Immortal Xiao, please follow me." Qin Taotian was overjoyed and immediately made a gesture of invitation. He then gave the middle-aged man a look and asked him to lead the way. He accompanied Xiao Chen and walked forward while chatting. Chapter 1330. On one hand, Qin Taotian wanted to build a good relationship with Xiao Chen, but on the other hand he hoped to obtain some information from Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen could naturally see through Qin Taotian's cunning mind, but Xiao Chen did not pay much attention to it. He chatted with him from time to time. Whenever it came to his origins and specific strength, Xiao Chen's answers were quite perfunctory, and he would just beat around the bush. Towards Xiao Chen's vague answers, Qin Taotian was also somewhat helpless. After asking a few more times, he understood that Xiao Chen was not willing to go into too much detail, so he did not dare to ask any further. After all, Xiao Chen's strength was unfathomable. If he said something wrong and angered Xiao Chen, then he would not have a good time. After walking for about an hour, the group once again returned to Yanlin town. Qin Taotian brought Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu to the Qin residence, turning left and right. After entering, he first ordered a servant to inform his grandfather, and then politely invited Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu into the guest hall to rest for a while. He also ordered someone to bring over some snacks and fruits for the two to enjoy. Xiao Chen did not refuse. He casually sat down at the seat of honor at the head of the guest seats. Hong Zhu sat down next to Xiao Chen and leaned against the back of the chair. Her posture was very alluring, but Qin Taotian did not dare to look at her for too long. This was exalted immortal Zhao's wife. If he looked at her for too long, wouldn't he be courting death? Not long after, a solemn and unsmiling old man in azure robes walked into the guest hall with steady steps. After sweeping his gaze around, he first glanced at Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu, then turned his head to look at Qin Taotian sternly and asked, "Taotian, I heard that you had a conflict with Zhao Wendeng in the restaurant today, and even brought back 2 supreme experts. What exactly happened?" This green-clothed old man had a bronze-colored face, and his bright and piercing eyes were like sharp swords as they swept across the audience. Although he was already over 60 years of age and had grizzled hair, once he spoke, his voice was as vigorous and powerful as a large bell, without the slightest feeling of an old man lacking in energy. The green-robed elder was the head of the Qin family, Qin Shengling. Initially, when he found out that Qin Taotian had intentionally offended the Zhao family's hedonistic son, Zhao Wendeng, in order to help someone out of trouble, he was a little displeased. He was prepared to teach this rascal a lesson when he returned. He didn't expect that after waiting for a long time, he just heard the servant report that young Master Qin had returned, but at the same time he also brought back 2 experts. The anger in Qin Shengling's heart immediately turned into confusion. When Qin Shengling stepped into the living room and saw Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu, his heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, "Taoan, this little bastard, he wasn't deceived, was he?" These 2 people looked very young. They didn't look like top-notch experts at all. Could it be that they had colluded with Zhao Wendeng and purposely set up a scene of a dispute, using this as a pretext to infiltrate the Qin family as spies? "Grandfather, don't be anxious. Listen to me slowly, it's like this." Qin Taotian was very clear about his grandfather's suspicious and cautious temperament. He was afraid that his grandfather would say something that would offend exalted immortal Xiao in a moment of doubt, so he hurriedly described in detail how Xiao Chen had killed a Foundation establishment expert with a single palm strike, and then instantly killed a Foundation establishment expert with a single punch. Hiss! Qin Shengling sucked in a breath of cold air after he finished listening. With an expression of disbelief, he asked suspiciously, "You're saying that the 2 Foundation establishment experts sent by the Zhao family were both killed? And one of them was even at the Foundation establishment peak?" That's right, that's right." Qin Taotian nodded his head repeatedly. He pointed at Xiao Chen and introduced, "This is exalted immortal Xiao, the one who killed the 2 experts from the Zhao family. I invited him to our house as a guest." At this moment, Qin Shengling's expression had already regained its calm. He turned around and sized up Xiao Chen. His face revealed just the right amount of doubt and he said calmly, "From what Taotian said, you're that Xiao Chong who killed the 2 experts from the Zhao family with one move?" How could Xiao Chen not see the doubt in the green-robed elder's eyes? However, he was too lazy to explain, so he nodded his head casually. Qin Shengling narrowed his eyes and looked at the unmoving Xiao Chen. He asked with slight doubt, "This makes this old man a little confused. This little brother looks so young. Could it be that the people from the Zhao family are all good-for-nothings? How could they be so easily killed by you? It sounds a little fishy." From Qin Shengling's point of view, the experts in the immortal cultivation world should be older elders. At the very least, they should be middle-aged men. Although Qin Taotian addressed him as exalted immortal Xiao, this exalted immortal looked a little too young, right? Not to mention the seductive girl beside him. No matter how he looked at her, she did not look like an expert at all. "Grandfather. How can you say that? Although exalted immortal Xiao is young, he does have the ability. The scene where he killed the 2 experts from the Zhao family, Uncle Nong and I saw it with our own eyes." Qin Taotian saw that his grandfather was still a little doubtful, so he hurriedly pointed at the middle-aged man beside him. The man who was addressed as Uncle Nong nodded his head, indicating that he had indeed witnessed the entire process. "Oh, is that so?" Qin Shengling frowned. He still felt that his grandson might have been tricked. Perhaps the other party had purposely set up this scene for them to see? As long as he could get his hands on a suitable tool, this silly kid would definitely fall for it immediately. Of course. Qin Taotian's back was drenched in cold sweat. He hurriedly turned his head and smiled apologetically at Xiao Chen. "That exalted immortal Xiao, please don't take it to heart. My grandfather is old and his thinking is more old-fashioned. He is not able to adapt to the trends of the new era." "Oh, it doesn't matter." Xiao Chen put down the melon seeds in his mouth and stood up expressionlessly. He looked coldly at Qin Shengling and said casually, "Since old Master Qin has doubts about my ability, then let me verify it a little." After saying that, Xiao Chen released a faint pressure that enveloped Qin Shengling and Qin Taotian. Qin Shengling's expression was a little puzzled at first. He did not know how Xiao Chen was going to verify his ability. Could it be that he was going to find someone else to fight? Before the thoughts in his mind could finish spinning, Qin Shengling immediately felt the temperature in the living room drop abruptly. A vast and ghastly pressure that blotted out the sky and covered the earth assaulted his face. The air was filled with a feeling of suffocation and death. It was as if an enormous ancient ferocious beast was baring its ferocious fangs at him. Qin Shengling's expression changed drastically. He could not be bothered to say anything else. He hurriedly circulated the primordial qi in his body to resist. Exalted, immortal Shao. You are a magnanimous person. Please don't stoop to my grandfather's level. Qin Taoyan's legs were also trembling from the pressure. He could not even speak clearly. With a pained expression, he stammered for mercy. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.